Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto learns the secret of the Shadow Clone's memory feedback during the fight with Mizuki Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Iruka looked around him in total astonishment at the sea of blonde hair and orange jumpsuits that suddenly were filling his vision that previously saw only a traitor and former friend and colleague getting ready to end his life. He couldn't believe it. His knucklehead prank king of a student had truly learned the Shadow Clone Jutsu in one evening to a level the Chunin had never seen before. He had witnessed the famous Kakashi and other Jonins in his lifetime spawn a clone or three before, but never the numbers he was seeing in front of himself at this very moment, and it made him smile to see his worst student finally succeed in something ninja-related. That smile quickly turned into a cough as he was reminded of the injury his former friend had caused him, that led him to be practically lying in the dirt outside of Konoha in the middle of the night as a 12-year-old fought against his former sensei-turned-traitor, Mizuki. The cough rocked his body enough that he gasped out in pain, and tried to concentrate on his young student as he watched a veritable dog pile of orange and blonde deliver an epic beatdown to the Chunin traitor. When his student had left the defeated and unconscious Mizuki to return to one of the few precious people he had in this village, the older Chunin was still in awe at the skill of Naruto Uzumaki, the #1 most unpredictable ninja, that he said something that would change the elemental nations for years to come. Naruto, I'm so proud of you. The Shadow Clone Jutsu, that is one of the original jutsu of the Nidaime Hokage, Iruka gasped between twinges of pain. It was originally created for espionage. Make sure you don't dismiss them altogether. The memory feedback is supposed to be very difficult with more than one clone. Memory feedback. And just like that, the elemental nations changed as a young genin just starting out is given a gift that will rapidly accelerate his growth to unprecedented levels due to a series of unique circumstances, bloodlines and heritage, techniques and knowledge. Naruto's face twitches as he dismisses the 100+ shadow clones of himself one after the other, with each one causing his original body to wince as he is continually inundated with memories of the exact same event happening from hundreds of different perspectives, and each one carries with it just a little bit of knowledge and experience. That knowledge and experience are felt 100 times over by Naruto after 10 minutes of methodically dismissing his shadow clones and assimilating the short battle from several perspectives. Wow, what a rush! Exclaimed Naruto after the last of the clones poofed out of existence, and he once again saw himself jump on the pile and this time bite Mizuki in the left hand as they attacked and beat him down. You'll have to tell me about that jutsu sometime. It's one I always wanted to learn, replied Iruka-sensei fondly as he watched his young student beam in praise of anyone needing to learn something from him, but then quickly remembering where they were. Iruka-sensei, we need to get you to the hospital, yelled Naruto once he realized his teacher was still bleeding with Mizuki's windmill shuriken still embedded in his back. Can you walk, sensei? Not easily, gasps out Iruka, but you could have some clones carry me. Was as far as he got before another poof of smoke and a dozen new clones were spreading out to help lift their teacher. Why don't I escort you first to the Hokage? Spoke a silent new arrival with the white ANBU mask of a cat, as 3 ANBU appeared around them, taking in the scene of the battle quickly, and paying extra attention to the large scroll strapped around every copy of Naruto's shoulder. Yeah, Gigi's gonna want his scroll back, answered Naruto sheepishly, just remembering where he last left the third Hokage and wondering about how much trouble he is going to be in. Wait! Called out Iruka, who turned to Naruto and told him to first close his eyes. After listening to his teacher, Naruto felt his goggles being removed from his forehead, and a cloth being wrapped in its place. Okay Naruto, you can open your eyes now. When he did, he instantly reached up and found a Konoha Hittite where his goggles used to be and a smiling Iruka without his own forehead protector looking at him in pride. You did it, Naruto. You are now officially a genin of Konohagakure. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Iruka-sensei, answered a misty-eyed Naruto that instantly tackle-hugged his sensei despite his injuries. As he was overwhelmed with emotion before the cat-masked ANBU cleared their throat and closed ranks around the pair before using a shunshin along with Bear to instantly travel to the Hokage's office with Iruka and Naruto in tow while the last member of the ANBU team gathered up Mizuki's unconscious body and took it to T&I, leaving 10 Naruto clones standing around and now empty. Clearing before they each realized they had nothing to do now, and all but one dispelled themselves one at a time, still remembering Iruka's warning about the memory feedback. The remaining shadow clone decided to pick up all the few shurikens he and Iruka used as well as the larger windmill shurikens of Mizuki before deciding to bring them back to his apartment so he could add them to his small and now growing collection of ninja gear. On his way, he passed a pair of training fields that seemingly glittered in the moonlight due to the scattered weapons abandoned throughout the fields. Quickly adding these to his growing pile of weapons, Naruto's clones soon made it back to his apartment, and dispelled himself after putting the weapons with his others, an action that had the real Naruto realize the unlimited potential of being in multiple places or doing a multitude of things at once. The real Naruto had just been dropped off at the Hokage's office by the Anbu cat, while Iruka was also brought for a quick questioning and corroborating of Naruto's story, before being taken to the hospital to give the old Kage and his young ninja time alone. The man known as the Professor for his large knowledge of shinobi life and all elements of it, was quite pleased with the events of the night as it resolved several problems he was having in regard to Naruto, that no longer caused him any worry. With Naruto now in the shinobi corps, he was only answerable to the Hokage, and no longer under any authority from the village council who had been making his life miserable since they found out about the burden he carried. It also pointed out the problem with lessening results coming out of the academy, and discovering a traitor who was seemingly sabotaging his academy students, giving him the right for a complete audit and eventual overhaul of the academy curriculum. It also hopefully spoke of the bias that Naruto had struggled against, and hopefully with that out of the way, and him now on the path to being a ninja, he would excel instead of struggle as he has in the past. Plus, with Naruto now passing with the class of clan heirs, he can include him in the team assignments, and finally get Naruto some of the help he was hoping to give him, as well as reward the Jonin sensei who has asked after his own sensei's son ever since learning of him. A surefire way to both give Kakashi the student he has been asking for, as well as the last Uchiha that the council has demanded, and making it so nobody would have any say in Naruto's development, since it would also then affect Sasuke's. The old Kage was very pleased with how things turned out, even if he went through a severe panic when first learning of Naruto's theft of the Forbidden Scroll. All had seemingly worked out. "Do you have questions for me, Naruto?" asked the old Kage after watching his youngest and newest ninja squirm in the seat he was brought to, as he seemingly struggled to get out what he wanted to say. "Were you ever going to tell me about the Kyuubi?" asked Naruto, somewhat grumbling and pouty, as he stared at the old leader of his village he always looked up to and admired as a great ninja and more importantly friend, but who he now wondered about his motives and reasons. "Or why you only friends with me because of it?" "I am sorry, Naruto. I was always planning to tell you when you were older," started Hiruzen Sarutobi, looking every one of his 60-plus years, as he tried to convince the young boy he cared for so much. "And I would like to think you would still be my favorite even if the Kyuubi didn't exist," he finished with a warm smile directed at Naruto. That did a lot to convince the young genin that his Gigi still cared for him a great deal. "Thanks, Gigi," answered the young Naruto, who then winced slightly as his last clone just finished dispelling himself and providing Naruto with the last hour of looting training fields for weapons and his own conclusions about being able to do multiple things at once. "I don't suppose you know something that could help me with my new clones?" Contemplated the Hokage, as he thought over what he witnessed from Iruka's explanation, and decided he could help his young ninja out quite a bit by expanding on what the Shadow Clone Jutsu is really capable of. "You know what, Naruto, I think I can help you." Over the next 20 minutes the old Kage was back in his favorite teaching mode, explaining to Naruto the intricacies, variations, and options in regards to the Shadow Clone with its memory feedback and more importantly as a training aid for someone of Naruto's constitution. That discussion led to areas where the Hokage thought Naruto should focus on, namely the basics of speed, strength, taijutsu, and chakra control to begin with. He also recommended that Naruto read up on all the things he didn't understand now that he could enter the shinobi library, and his education was no longer being hindered. After that he just reminded the young troublemaker that team assignments were in 2 days on Monday at 8 a.m. at the academy, and that he had until then to get ready and prepare for the type of ninja he wanted to be. That discussion was surprising to Naruto when he slowly began the walk home to his apartment just as dawn approached, and thought over all the things he needed to do and accomplish before he would be taken seriously as a ninja, and decided that he should start thinking things through more and have a plan in place that he could try to follow to improve. His first real obstacle no longer mattered, as he was no longer a civilian where he was continually denied entry to civilian stores or the civilian library, and could now enter the shinobi library on his own. Deciding that he had nothing better to do at the moment, with so many things still floating around in his head, he changed course and headed to the shinobi library where genins were allowed to browse the Leaf's collection of jutsu scrolls, taijutsu styles, and ninja history books. After nodding to the scowling Chunin who glared at him and his Hittite, he emerged inside the first floor of the shinobi library dedicated to genin-level shinobi or higher with no real idea on where to begin. Walking into a quiet corner, he decides to simply make a bunch of clones and start grabbing things off the shelves to see what's available, and a large explosion of smoke later, and there are easily 50 cones looking around the shelves before quickly grabbing the nearest books and scrolls and starting the long process of going through it all. Naruto, not being used to reading much, quickly grew bored after grabbing a book on the Warring Clans era and banged his head against the table. This action was mirrored by almost half of the 50 cones he created, who like him were unaccustomed to reading much and growing frustrated at the slow process but were not made of as strong of stuff as the original, causing almost 24 clones to dispel themselves with the hit to the table at almost the exact same time. The poofs of smoke were then accompanied by the groan of pain from the original Naruto, who was quickly being inundated with almost 24 memories in an instant of all the different books he started. Surprisingly, it only took a few seconds for all those memories to resolve themselves and get fit into the brain and understanding of Naruto, to where he almost instantly felt just a tiny bit smarter and more capable of prolonged reading. Deciding to again spawn several dozen more clones, Naruto had most of them pick up where their previous clones started and abandon their books when knocking themselves out, while the others went looking for more things to read up on. After another half an hour of this, several of the clones near one section of the library started cheering and getting much louder, prompting the original to investigate the noise. It turned out that the group found several of the E and D ranked ninjutsus available to genins, including more detailed accounts into the Academy 3. Reading up on the basic clone, henge, and replacement techniques, Naruto was able to learn a bit more about all 3 ninjutsus, to where he was at least comfortable with the 2 he was already capable of but not yet a master at. One of the books actually mentioned how to truly master these techniques and make them more formidable, and he learned that his henge was done wrong forever, and nobody noticed or mentioned that the henge is supposed to be only an illusion and not a physical transformation. Regardless, the henge and replacement jutsu were both added to the growing list of things Naruto wanted to spend more time and energy training up on. He also found a rank echolocation jutsu for developing skills to be a sensor, a sensory enhancement jutsu that supposedly doubled the sensitivity of your senses, eyes, ears, nose, etc., and an entire series of camping and survival jutsus that allowed you to start a fire, find water, clean or filter water, and dig or move the ground to store food and clean up campsites. By this time, it was nearing the regular morning time and Naruto had been awake for over 24 hours and was starting to tire mentally, but not yet physically, as he was still somewhat hyped up about all of his discoveries, and all the new jutsu he wanted to try. So, he went outside for a quick snack and then spawned another 100 clones and gave them instructions to head to an abandoned training ground and split into groups and practice the new jutsus and review the ones he already had until he was more comfortable with them, while he continued to read up on strength and speed training options with the remaining 50 or so clones that were still going through books and scrolls for more useful information. Within 20 minutes of sending out the group of clones to practice, Naruto started getting steady memories back from them after every one was dispelled, usually trying to do one of the new jutsus he just learned. He quickly realized that after every clone dispelled, and their memories were incorporated, he and his clones instantly became just that little bit better, with more experience and understanding after every attempt. With that in mind, he decided to start refreshing his clones and began dispelling all those with him, and after several moments of assimilating 50 times worth of information learned over 2 hours, he felt increasingly better. He then respawned another 100 clones with all the knowledge he had learned so far, and sent them to reinforce the first groups sent to the training field to keep practicing all the new jutsu, while he made another 100 to continue his reading and studying. It was almost 2 hours later when Naruto spawned another 100 clones and sent them to the training field to keep practicing, and in that time he had made several very important discoveries both in the library and on the training field. In the library, he finally came across a scroll on supplemental chakra control exercises beyond the leaf sticking one they all had to learn their second year at the academy, and that he struggled mightily with forever. After reading about the exercises, and hints and problems others encountered, Naruto finally realized his basic clone problem too. He simply had too much chakra and nowhere near enough control. Likewise, all of his jutsu were huge chakra sinks, as he had no control to regulate chakra flow, and usually just overloaded them with chakra until they worked in some fashion. This worked for everything except the Bunshin, which was unusable to someone with too much chakra and not enough control, and subsequently turned his illusion henge into a solid transformation, as the chakra cost was 10 times what anybody else ever put into the henge jutsu. Reading up on chakra control, and the various exercises as well as the benefits and drawbacks had Naruto cursing the academy instructors for sabotaging him with unhelpful hints about putting more chakra into things, probably to try and get him to burn out his chakra coils, a very damaging and potentially deadly affliction that affects a few people every generation. Now knowing how important chakra control is to his health, and his ability to throw ninjutsu around like candy due to his large chakra capacity, Naruto realized why his Jiji told him to work on the basics, as this alone will prove the most beneficial to Naruto's continued development. With those thoughts in mind, he dismisses all of his reading clones and respawns them with new instructions to start practicing chakra control, as he finally decides to call it a day and head back to his apartment for some mental rest. His head was definitely feeling very full, more so than at any point in his past, and he knows it's because of how much information he has just learned about so many things related to him, his history, his burden, his chakra, his ninja career, and his new jutsu. As he makes his way home, he also realized that he is in fact very weary and physically exhausted too, as he feels the combined effects of hundreds of hours of training, reading, and learning starting to take its toll. With these thoughts in mind, he gets to his apartment, and spawns a pair of clones to clean the absolute mess he made while he passes out in his bed before his head even touches the pillow. Chapter 2: Remedial Training. 10 glorious hours of sleep later, and Naruto is woken up to a brick being thrown through his living room window that causes him to immediately bolt upright in bed as his mind quickly tries to catch up and remember where he is. Recognizing his bedroom, and the now somewhat familiar sight of a broken window after some idiot throws something, he instantly is more awake and instinctively pops off 10 clones, one to clean up the mess while the others scout and try to find and apprehend the suspect. As he slept through the whole day, and it was now dark again as evening approached, Naruto lost the vandal he was pursuing in the little light, and the slow and groggy start were also contributing factors. Thankfully, the mess was easily cleaned, and after waking further, he decided to continue from where he left off yesterday, and spam 200 clones and sent half of them to the training field to continue with his practice, and the other half back to the library to continue studying. Meanwhile, the original Naruto got dressed and headed to Ichiraku Ramen for some much-needed food of the gods and some all-you-can-eat celebratory dinner. His mood had never been better. He had finally achieved his dream of becoming a shinobi, and was now on his way to getting stronger one clone at a time, and currently heading to his favorite ramen stand. Life was great. "Uchiha-sama, are you sure you don't want more kunai? Free for our favorite new genin," came the loud and sleazy voice of Himuro Buki, the leading weaponsmith in Konoha for several years, and also a royal ass-kisser and member of the civilian council that favored the last loyal Uchiha something fierce. Naruto just scowled as he watched the sleazy weapon merchant try to give away more stock to his hated rival for nothing other than his family name, and it really pissed the young blonde off. He had been thrown out of Buki's store more times than he could count, and he still didn't have all the gear he knew he needed for the start of his ninja career, and wondered how he could go about getting his own ninja supplies filled. Too bad he wasn't an Uchiha. Wait. He had something that could make him pass for an Uchiha, and it would only cost him a little chakra to get the henge applied, and he could be using Sasuke's face to get all of his needed gear at below average prices, as most in the village bent over backwards if it meant helping the last Uchiha. Deciding that he couldn't show up right after the real Sasuke left, he instead started making a mental list of all the supplies and gear that he needed to shop for before being assigned to Jounin Sensei and team. With the henge of the team, he could probably get everything he needed for half the cost and couldn't wait to pull one over on the stupid prejudiced shopkeepers. But first he needed to eat, and so, he planned to get his shopping done after he had his fill of miso ramen. "Aji-sen miso ramen, and keep 'em coming," called out Naruto in a loud voice as he pulled aside the curtain into his favorite ramen stand and made his way happily to the counter. Naruto calls out "I am" happily as her favorite customer and honorary little brother comes and sits in his spot. A smile larger than she can ever remember seeing on his face makes her own lips curl. "Where have you been for the past few days? Dad, get out here, Naruto's here." Despite all the recent changes in such a short amount of time and everything he has learned in the last few days, Naruto was still very much the same loud, obnoxious bragger, and couldn't stop himself from grabbing and showing off his Hitite and his megawatt smile. Ayame eyes widened at seeing the symbol of their village on Naruto, and couldn't be happier or prouder of her little brother, and smiled back congratulating him when her father finally stuck his head through the kitchen curtain. "I like the new accessory, Naruto. The symbol of the leaf looks good on you," came Tuchi Ichiraku's happily worded praise before ducking back into the kitchen and then emerging again a moment later with a steaming bowl of miso ramen for his favorite customer, who had reason to celebrate it seemed. "Dadabayo," exclaimed Naruto with enthusiasm as his eyes followed the approaching bowl of heavenly goodness and his smile never wavered, "and thanks, old man." Naruto paused barely enough to say thanks and break apart his chopsticks before attacking the bowl of miso ramen with gusto, as he finished in moments, and over the next half hour put away a dozen bowls of his favorite food with no end in sight. After the first 2 bowls, he was able to slow down enough to talk to Ayame and old man Tuchi between kitchen runs for more food, and tell them all about failing the exam and ending up being tricked by the traitor Mizuki to steal the forbidden scroll. He didn't go into too many actual details but was able to give the pair a good picture of basically what happened and what he has been doing since. The Ichiraku family couldn't be prouder or happier for their young friend, whose dream of becoming a ninja and eventually Hokage was very well known. They knew how he was treated by most in the village, and knew all the difficulties he constantly had to overcome and deal with, and had always felt for the spirited boy. Seeing him happy, and seemingly turning his life around for the better, had them both overjoyed and also a little worried for their emotional friend, as they knew the dangers of the ninja life despite being civilians. "Just make sure you train hard, and always be careful. We wouldn't want anything to happen to our favorite customer," pleaded Ayame as she watched the younger boy demolish his 15th bowl of ramen and finally seemed to slow down. "Dadabayo, Ayame Nachan," responded an excited 12-year-old to his favorite people in the village outside of Jiji and Irika-sensei. Once he was finally finished eating, he paid a tidy sum to the 2 Ikarakus for all of his food, and then decided on his plan to get supplies cheap by henging into Sasuke. He had 3 stops to make to get all the supplies he had slowly been thinking about, and decided to make Bookie's weapon shop the last one. With that in mind, he headed towards the heart of the merchant district where his first stop was, Higurashi Outfitters. Higurashi's is where you go to get the very best of custom and overly specialized weapons, and not necessarily the shopping place for fresh out of the academy genin. But they sold one thing that Naruto had seen mentioned several times in all of his recent reading, and that was storage scrolls and Fuinjutsu supplies. The art of sealing instantly caught Naruto's attention while doing all of his research, as his life was defined by the seal for the Kyuubi, and storage scrolls were just about the coolest and most helpful things to use. So, before ducking into the store, Naruto henged to look like Sasuke Uchiha and entered the large high-end weapon shop with his head held high and an arrogant sneer on his face that he thought resembled the team pretty well. It didn't take him long to find the corner of the store dedicated to Fuinjutsu, and he quickly picked up all 3 books they had for sale, as well as 6 storage scrolls, and a small starter Fuinjutsu kit that had a small amount of usable paper, ink, and brushes to create your own seals. Taking it to the counter, the middle-aged man there scowled down at Sasuke, which surprised Naruto as he thought everyone loved the last Uchiha, before demanding the full price of 20,000 yen and taking a sizable dent out of Naruto's available funds. Luckily, the owner Ito Higurashi showed him how to load everything he purchased into one of the storage scrolls and sent him on his way. The next stop was just 2 stalls down, and was one of the better clothing shops for the more standard ninja gear. There, a younger female clerk instantly recognized Sasuke and was all over him the entire time he was in the store, trying to help in any way she could. Claiming that he was only buying training clothes, and didn't want the Uchiha fan on anything was a little more difficult than he thought it would be, but eventually he just got the civilian girl and former academy dropout to do him this little favor with anime hearts in her eyes. On the plus side, he got 10 standard black pairs of pants and shirts, as well as 3 pairs of black sandals, 3 sets of arm and leg guards, 5 shuriken and or kunai pouches, and a few other basic necessities that caught his eye, including a beginner set of training weights. Due to his stalker/helper, he was also able to get the entire purchase for half off the would-be 20,000 plus yen price tag, and leaving him with still plenty of money to fill up his new weapon pouches. As he planned, the last stop was to Bookie's weapons, and he was instantly greeted by the sleazy Himuro Bookie, who was quick to tell him he knew Sasuke would be back for more supplies. He instantly started pulling Saban, kunai, and shuriken by the bucket loads and began piling it all up at the counter. Within 20 minutes, there were more weapons on his counter than Naruto had ever seen in one place before, but he was more than happy to seal them all in a storage scroll and take up Himuro on his generous recommendation to have them for free, or a later return favor that had Naruto laughing his ass off on the inside. Take that, team. After that, it was a return to his apartment as stores were now closing and all the civilians were starting to turn in for the night as was their usual. Naruto, however, was just getting started, and after a quick trip to drop off his new things and put on his new weights and training outfit, he hurried to a nearby training ground he sometimes frequented and put his new training plan in motion. He wanted to know how many clones he could spawn if he really tried, and just decided to do what he usually did and throw a bunch more chakra into the jutsu and hope for the best. Naruto surprised even himself when well over 500 shadow clones appeared all throughout the clearing, and did a little happy dance as he realized he could really step up his training even more now. Knowing how much it had already helped him, he sent the first 100 clones to the Shinobi Library to continue reading everything they could, and after his henge success with shopping, he also decided to send 100 henge clones to the civilian library as well. The next 100 were sent to work on chakra control, then 100 went to work on his ninjutsu, while the last full 100 went to work on taijutsu, leaving the original with about 60 remaining clones. Knowing from the Hokage's little lesson on the shadow clone's capabilities, he knew that all physical training had to be done by his original body, but also wanted to test himself fighting against his clones. So he decided to just have them attack him in waves, starting small as he still didn't really have a very well-defined taijutsu style, even if it had quickly started to improve over the last day. Because they could only really take one good hit, Naruto quickly worked his way through the 60 clones for a pretty good warm-up, and was pleased with his quickly growing skill in his basic taijutsu. Naruto spent the next 2 hours running himself into the ground physically, through actual running as well as several other calisthenics exercises he vaguely remembered from the academy. Shortly after he began, he spawned and popped a clone with instructions to research other exercises and was able to incorporate them into his workout, as memories of his research in clones would occasionally pop into his head at random moments throughout his activity. At the end of 2+ hours, as the hour approached midnight, Naruto felt that his chakra had recovered enough to try another mass clone creation, and this time was able to spawn over 650 of the doppelgangers. Knowing that his library clones only needed a few replacements, he sent 24 to each library with focusing instructions for the civilian side to start on learning about the body, and ways to improve it without chakra. He then sent half of the remaining 600 clones to the group working on taijutsu as they had suffered the most losses due to their activity, and then split the remaining 300 in half and sent each group to one of the two remaining groups, chakra control and ninjutsu. These last two groups had not lost too many people, as they only expired when they screwed up a jutsu, exhausted their chakra supply, or got too close to a neighboring clone. With all of his clones now occupied again on improving his basics in the areas he had them working on, he stopped by the small stream in the training ground and got a long drink before once again starting up his physical exercises. He ended up doing the exact same thing another 2+ hours later at 2 a.m., and spawned as many clones as he could with his recovered chakra, adding them as reinforcements to all his others still out there before getting a long drink and small snack of 3 ration bars and starting up the physical exercises once again. When 4 a.m. came around, Naruto again had recovered enough chakra to easily spawn another 600 clones to add to his training troops, even if he knew that he was running out of room in the current 2 training grounds his clones were already occupying. Taking a longer break this time to get a drink and snack, Naruto started processing the hundreds of memories and experiences he had gained over the last several hours and couldn't be happier with his overall progress in all fields. The Shinobi Library team reported to being over halfway through the Genin section, and had even managed to slip 3 henge clones into the Chunin section, while the Chunin librarians changed shifts. The civilian library team was still in its beginning stages, but he was pleased with what progress they had made, and he learned they almost completed the fitness section and were moving on to beginning medical texts to learn more about the body. The chakra control team had finally mastered the leaf sticking exercise to an insane degree, keeping 20 leaves on different parts of the body and being able to move them around without dropping them, and had since moved on to the tree climbing exercise, which was going very well. They had almost reached the top of the trees they were practicing on, and were then going to work on their endurance and ability to multitask while stuck to the tree. The book mentioned being able to fight or train while stuck to the tree for over an hour, as the ultimate test of this skill's mastery, and Naruto was planning to master each of these skills before moving on to the next chakra control exercise on the list, water walking. The taijutsu team was moving along relatively well, but without a specific style or proper instruction, he was kind of stuck as an unpredictable brawler just practicing the few limited moves he knew to exhaustion. His moves were getting increasingly better, but they still lacked the cohesiveness of a true style or the fluidity of a master of the art. He was hoping his Jounin instructor would be able to help him pick out and practice a taijutsu style that was more tailored to him so he could really improve in that area too. The ninjutsu team was probably the most behind and uncoordinated, as there were now a half-dozen skills and jutsus that they were trying to learn and master simultaneously. The first jutsu he had really tried to master was the kawarimi or replacement technique, and he reasoned that it was probably best to learn to dodge and stay alive first before moving on to others. Likewise, after that first day, his replacement was practically flawless now, and he only needed to keep working on his speed with the technique as he continued to dedicate several clones to continually improving it, as well as his hand signs. With the help and increase in his chakra control, by the end of that second day he was able to get the standard henge illusion, and not just his overpowered true transformation, but still couldn't produce a viable Bunshin clone, although he was getting closer. The survival skill jutsus were all coming along really well, as he was able to start fires, find and filter water, move earth for fire pits, latrines, and the cleanup of campsites and food preservation. He was also now working on some of the tracking and hunting skills he read about in the hopes of surviving out of the village while on missions, and couldn't be happier to find a way to not always have to eat ration bars. The only problem the ninjutsu team was having was related to the 2 sensory jutsus Naruto picked up, the echolocation 1 and the enhancement 1. He didn't understand the concept of echolocation, and it made it really difficult for the young genin to do anything more than expelling chakra into his surroundings with no understanding of any feelings he was picking up. The enhancement 1 he was capable of pulling off, but it left his head spinning, his eyes stinging, his nose burning, his ears ringing, and in no condition to do anything other than want to curl up in the dark and quiet. Finished with his break, he was just getting up to start another round of physical exercises when he saw just at the border of his training ground a pair of green blurs, and heard the unusual sounds of 2 men screaming about their flames of youth as they raced past. Amazed at their speed and dedication, as it was just 4 a.m., he shook his head and with a more determined look on his face jumped right back into his physical exercise. He was pleased to discover, too, that his speed had almost caught back up to normal even with the first level of weights on, and knew he would be turning them up a level soon. At the next 2+ hour interval, it was nearing 7 a.m. and the village was truly starting to wake up and come alive, and Naruto was slowly becoming more weary and tired both mentally and physically. So this time, after spawning another 600+ clones and sending them off to reinforce their brethren, the real Naruto headed towards Ichiraku's ramen to partake in some breakfast of the gods, and a well-earned break. It was somewhat amusing to see Teuchi and Ayam again so soon, since he had just had dinner there several hours and several hundred clones earlier. "Back again, Naruto?" asked Ayam as she saw him approach their stand while cleaning up the counter and finishing the last few tasks before opening. "You bet I'm starved," responded the young blonde tiredly as he seemingly dragged himself to his usual seat. "Can you get me at least 5 miso ramens to start?" Sure, Naruto," replied Ayam as she looked at her young friend with concern, as she rarely saw him that tired or worn out. "Are you alright?" Yeah," responded Naruto with a little chuckle to himself, "just training a lot." "Oh well, that's good," came Ayam's reply, before calling into the kitchen to her dad for Naruto's order, before continuing around their little restaurant and preparing everything to open, while peppering the young blonde with questions about his training schedule as he obviously wasn't keeping normal hours. Naruto told her a little bit about the shadow clone, and the memory transfer, and then what all was going into his training and why the schedule was so wonky until team assignments tomorrow morning on Monday. His plan was to continue training through today until he dropped hopefully this evening, and then sleep it all off and be ready and refreshed Monday morning. He didn't know what to expect from team assignments, but had read enough to learn that every Genin team consisted of 3 Genin and 1 Jounin sensei at least until Chunin exams where promotions usually broke up the Genin teams. Naruto was somewhat worried about the makeup of his future team, as there were not a lot of people in his class or any of the others that he liked and got along with. What if he got paired with someone who hated him and wouldn't work with him, or with some losers that are likely to get themselves killed the first time they face any opposition? Not to mention, his Jounin sensei might not be a good teacher, or hate him or the Kyuubi and hold it against him, or any other scenarios he was dreaming of and possibly dreading. Well, there wasn't much Naruto could do about worrying over something that hasn't happened yet, or plan for all possibilities, so he instead just tried to keep an open mind and promised to work hard. He wouldn't stop training, that was for sure, and as long as he was doing that, he felt that he was improving and working towards his goal of being a kick-ass ninja and Hokage. Finishing up his 7 bowls of ramen, he thanked Ayam and Teuchi before returning to the training ground he had been using and jumping right back into his physical exercise. Needing another bigger food break around lunchtime, after another longer exercise circuit and spawning of 600+ clones, Naruto decided to try somewhere different, as his reading on nutrition showed that his diet was severely lacking in a lot of the essentials he needed for growth. Needing to incorporate more protein and vegetables, he ended up going to a nearby barbecue restaurant that Choji and Shikamaru from his class often frequented, and he at least knew of. Deciding to play it safe, he hinged into a nondescript person before entering the restaurant, and being led to a counter with a small grill in front of him, he started ordering everything to see what he liked the most. After a large meal where he tried several different types of meat and vegetables, and discovered that they weren't all horrible, Naruto was pleased with ordering seconds of his favorites, and really enjoying them. That afternoon, Naruto first upped his training weights to the second setting before attacking his physical exercise once again, and pushing himself to always go faster and longer in order to improve. Around 3 in the afternoon, Naruto's chakra was recharged enough to spam another 700 clones that he quickly put to work reinforcing others and also setting a group aside to just work on hand seals. By that evening, when he practically collapsed onto his stool at Ichiraku's counter, Naruto was beyond fried mentally and physically, and not really looking forward to assimilating all the remaining clones' memories and experiences. But first, he needed some serious food and asked his favorite father and daughter pair if they could make him a loaded miso ramen with additional vegetables so he could try and get a more balanced diet. They agreed to make him his own batch under 2 conditions, the first of which was they had creative control over the ramen still and could add things they felt were important that he might not know about. The second was that he had to pay for and eat at least 10 bowls anytime they made him his own batch, otherwise they would be losing money. The 10-minute wait for a new batch to get cooking was pretty difficult for the overly hungry young genin surrounded by the smell of his favorite food, but he was able to remain seated and patient as he mentally reviewed anything else he needed to accomplish before team assignments. When he finally was delivered a large bowl of steaming ramen, he almost cried out in thanks due to his massive hunger, and then in praise at the wonderful creation of the gods after his first taste. Easily plowing through over 10 bowls, Naruto ended up eating the entire batch of his new Naruto Special Ramen Asterisk, and happily paid the Ichirakus and promised to return for more. Naruto then decided to head back to his apartment now that evening was approaching. His bone-weary tiredness was starting to affect him, and he knew he needed some serious sleep to recover from the almost 22-hour training day he just finished. Getting back to his place, he quickly got ready for bed and laid down on his lumpy old mattress, before beginning the long process of dispelling all of his remaining clones scattered throughout the village. The amount of knowledge and experience that was coming in from his clones was almost overwhelming, and he realized that some of the clones had survived almost 20 hours, and with the numbers he kept sending out, there was a staggering amount of returning data. Even with the excessive tiredness from the night before, Naruto still only needed 8 hours of sleep before he woke up fully refreshed and ready for another great day filled with team assignments, and hopefully more training. As it was still only 6 in the morning, Naruto quickly put on a training outfit and made just a dozen shadow clones to clean up his apartment, make repairs to the broken window, go grocery shopping and prepare breakfast while he went for a morning workout. Keeping his training weights at the second stage for now, he pushed through a reduced physical workout until just after 7 a.m. when he returned to his apartment for breakfast, and to gather his things and head to the academy by 8 for team assignments, excited about what this first chapter of his ninja career would entail. Naruto special ramen, more protein and vegetables than usual, but much better for a growing boy and ninja. Chapter 3, Team Assignments. Naruto arrived at the academy with 10 minutes until 8, and quickly made his way to his old classroom to learn about his new team assignment and Jounin-sensei, and he could barely wait to get started. Arriving at the classroom before Iruka-sensei, Naruto simply walked in and headed to one of the back rows to just sit down and wait. He recognized most of the students already in the room as his fellow classmates, and there were growing mumbles from them all as he found and took his seat until someone had to say something. "What are you doing here, Naruto? This is only for those who passed," scolded Kiba as he stood from his seat and turned to glare at the shorter blonde, while a few others grumbled in agreement, and even Shikamaru lifted his head off his desk for a moment to look at Naruto and then listen to his answer. "Those ninja observation skills are top-notch, Kiba," responded Naruto with a slight glare to the feral bully who often tried to ridicule or pick on Naruto, while patronizingly tapping his Hitite and otherwise ignoring the Fang boy with his canine companion on his head. "How'd you get one of those? They are only for those who passed the exam. We all saw you fail. Who'd you steal it from?" argued back Kiba aggressively after several snickers were heard after Naruto's last comment, not liking to be shown up especially by the class dobe as he started walking towards Naruto threateningly. "Iruka-sensei gave it to me after I passed," responded Naruto with a flat, emotionless voice, which should have tipped everyone off that something was very different with the blonde, and to stop antagonizing him, but Kiba was never known for his restraint or common sense. "Bullshit," yelled Kiba as he finally reached Naruto's spot and made to reach for the Hitite on the blonde's head, without paying any attention to the blonde himself. What happened next had every witness in the classroom stop immediately what they were doing and watch wide-eyed as Naruto moved without warning or seemingly even seeing the movement. He easily avoided the outreached arm of Kiba by sliding underneath it and coming up behind the feral Inuzuka, grabbing his outreached arm at the wrist and quickly twisting it behind his back and forcing the older boy to bend over the desk he just vacated or risk having said arm snapped by the smaller blonde. Naruto simply held the arm in that precarious position that any more movement would surely see it shatter before practically growling to the usually arrogant young Inuzuka. "This is the only warning you will get, Kiba. Leave me alone. I am done taking yours or anyone else's crap," replied Naruto in a flat voice that still carried with it a great deal of barely controlled anger. It was of course to this scene that the final 2 members of the class showed up with their former teacher and sensei right behind them, and causing the 2 immature girls to stop their ridiculous fight over sitting near Sasuke to stare at the strange scene. Naruto saw the new arrivals and simply decided to cut his losses and released Kiba's arm right after giving it a small twinge so the boy knew how close he came to breaking it. The added shove of the feral boy back towards his own seat, and Naruto sitting back down without a word, had most of the class staring with open-mouthed shock at the blonde, who they were just now realizing wasn't wearing his usual bright kill-me orange jumpsuit or screaming at the top of his lungs about becoming Hokage. "Stop trying to be cool like Sasuke, Naruto Baka," yelled Sakura Haruno after she regained her equilibrium from the unusual scene, and glared at said blonde before turning to the object of her affection and seemingly swooning before parking herself at the desk right next to the last Uchiha. The other girl, however, a fellow blonde named Ino Yamanaka, just continued to stare at Naruto as though she was seeing him for the first time, and something about him triggered a memory that she tried to hold onto but couldn't. Ignoring it as unimportant for now, she instead found a seat on Sasuke's other side and proceeded to stare lovingly at the emo Avenger and forgetting all about her fellow blonde classmate. The final arrival was also watching the scenes with Naruto very carefully, as he couldn't remember a time that his hyperactive knucklehead student had ever shown such skill or composure around others, and hoped it was a permanent change. "Settle down, everyone," started Iruka as he stood at the front of the class with the team assignments written on a piece of paper in front of him. "I am going to read out the team assignments in 1 second, and afterwards you are going to be able to join your new teammates, and wait to get picked up by your new Jounin-sensei." "Iruka-sensei, why is Naruto here? He can't even make clones. Didn't he fail the exam?" came the question from a sneering Kiba, as he glared at Naruto, probably in retaliation for showing him up earlier. "He did more than simply pass the exam. He protected the village, captured a traitor, and saved my life," continued a proud Iruka to a now speechless class, giving a small bow to a stunned Naruto before pulling out his list and reading out the names. "Team 1 is Naruto only somewhat paid attention to all the team assignments, as he was shocked by Iruka's honest and blunt admission and bow of thanks. He was then just listening for his own name to be called, and still somewhat embarrassed by the looks others were now occasionally sending him. Glancing around the room, he was reminded of some of his reading on the history and clans of Konoha and how unusual it was that his academy graduating class had so many heirs to those clans, and wondered if it would be important in the future. Team 7 is Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your Jounin sensei is Kakashi Hatake, continued Iruka without pausing, despite the high-pitched squeal of Sakura when she realized she was on her true love's team. Her scream drowned out the many groans from the other fangirls who now missed out on being with the last Uchiha, and Naruto slamming his head down into his desk knowing this team would be really difficult with the antisocial and arrogant Sasuke, and the useless fangirl Sakura whose only thing they had in common was their mutual dislike of their final teammate. Iruka continued on with Team 8 that had Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame and Hinata Hyuga, under Jounin Kurenai Yuhi, and Team 10 with Choji Akimichi, Shikamaru Nara, and Ino Yamanaka under the Hokage's son, Asuma Saratobi. The rest of the teams were filled with generic graduates who at times showed maybe a skill or two in certain areas, but were never going to be great all-around ninjas without some serious training and help. It made Naruto wonder if the teams were actually put together with the thought of keeping the stronger teams and clan children together, or if they were put together for specific purposes like tracking or frontline fighters, or some other factors came into play as well. Naruto decided it probably didn't matter yet, as they were all starting out together at the bottom. It would be up to them to train and get stronger individually and as a team, and become one of those specific types of teams if that was what they were supposed to become. He wondered, though, what was the purpose of his team. Both he and Sasuke were frontline fighters while Sakura was anything but, so maybe she was simply supposed to grow into a supporting long-range role of medic nin or genjutsu specialist. Either way, he knew what his job now was: to constantly work to get better and keep pushing himself until he was recognized as the greatest Hokage in the village's history. Just because he decided to tone down his expressing of those desires didn't mean the desire itself had disappeared in any way. Naruto was going to become the Hokage. He was going to prove to everyone that he is the best. He was going to change people's minds about him. He was going to be a legend, and that started now. He was now a genin, out from under any civilian authority, and free to grow and live his life as he wanted. Ready and able to work hard and train himself into the ground until he earned the respect of his village and the shinobi nation. His inner monologuing, however, had him miss most of Iruka's pep talk about becoming ninja of the village, and what to expect and how to represent yourself and your village with pride. Naruto did catch the gist of it all, and was pleased when his teacher again affirmed how proud he was of everyone who made it this far. But then, Jounin senseis started arriving and pulling their teams out one after another until only the 3 students of the new Team 7 remained behind with an exasperated Iruka. Well, I am to report to the mission desk at noon, so I can't wait any longer for Kakashi-san to get here, spoke Iruka after waiting over a half an hour after the last team left with still no sign of the tardy sensei. I'm sorry you 3, Kakashi has a bit of a reputation, you may want to get comfortable, he finished before waving to the final 3 waiting students, ignoring the glaring Naruto for his laughter at their expense. Come find me later, Naruto, I think I owe you some dinner at Ichiraku's. Databao! Cheered Naruto in excitement, his mind instantly going to dream about his beloved ramen, while he happily waved goodbye to Iruka, and settled in to wait. Ugh, is this guy ever going to show? Exploded Naruto 15 minutes after Iruka left, his patience almost completely out now and just itching to get out there and continue training at least. Shut up, Naruto baka! Shouted Sakura in her high-pitched wail that physically hurt Naruto's sensitive ears, that still hadn't fully recovered from his experiments with the enhancement jutsu, and seemed to be getting even more sensitive as time went on. Grunted Sasuke, though neither Sakura or Naruto understood what he was grunting at, both thinking that the Uchiha was just agreeing with them. Whatever, I have better things to do than just sit here doing nothing, grumbled Naruto to himself as he got up and threw open the classroom window before going through the already very familiar cross-hand seal and spawning 700 clones on the academy grounds, and 1 clone sitting in the seat he just vacated. Jumping out the window moments later to his lone clone in the classroom's shout of traitor, he quickly led his clones around the building and over to the academy training ground and obstacle course. He then started his physical exercises as he had his clones run through their own chakra control training in the surrounding trees, tired of waiting around doing nothing while he waited for his new sensei to arrive. He got in a good hour of training before he was alerted to the arrival of his sensei by the classroom clone dispelling, and learning of the 5-minute window he gave them to meet him on the roof. Naruto took off like a shot as soon as the memory was processed, and using his almost perfected tree climbing technique, ran straight up the outside of the academy building until he reached the roof seconds before either of his teammates came through the door at the other end of the roof. Seeing the gravity-defying silver hair of the man claiming to be his new sensei Kakashi Hatake was impressive, and watching said ninja as he sat on the edge of the roof reading an orange book, Naruto was impressed with the man's physique. He was tall and muscular, though not too bulky, and despite carrying himself as a lazy ass, Naruto could see his single eye not covered by his slanted Hittite taking in everything around him. So it's true that was a shadow clone in the classroom, spoke the tall veteran ninja as he looked at the blonde ninja standing in front of him in surprise. He was a lot less orange and loud than he remembered from both personal observation and reading his file and records, and was really starting to look like someone Kakashi loved as a father figure and sensei. Yeah, mumbled Naruto somewhat self-consciously, not sure if he was already in trouble with his new sensei for the perceived prank. Even if that wasn't his intention, his reputation would demand it. Sorry, I just didn't know how long we were going to have to wait. So instead of staying with your teammates to meet your new sensei, you would rather train by yourself? Asked the older ninja with a bit of hardening in his lone visible eye, that let Naruto know that his answer here would be very important to his continued relationship with the silver-haired jounin. Well, I didn't want to train by myself, but I know Sasuke would never lower himself to listen to me or train with me on his own, and Sakura could care less about training altogether unless Sasuke was involved. You weren't there yet, and I was getting antsy and needed to let off some energy before I did something stupid, responded Naruto, slowly at first as he carefully chose his words, but getting quicker as he became more comfortable laying out everything he could think of. I left a clone that would alert me the moment you arrived, and didn't leave the academy grounds so I would be close by. Well reasoned, began Kakashi slowly, but I am not sure how I like my cute little genins not wanting to train together or listen to one another. Doesn't sound like a very good team. In the future you should also ask before assuming that your teammates wouldn't want to train with you. Grunted Sasuke, though nobody knew what exactly he was grunting about as the three others on the roof all looked at him waiting for him to elaborate. They waited a while. Okay, replied Kakashi after a minute of awkward silence, where they waited in vain for the last Uchiha to continue. Let's try some introductions. You know likes, dislikes, dreams, and goals for your ninja career. Could you show us how? Asked a timid Sakura, having a hard time trying to understand what was going on, and what their new sensei wanted or was getting at with his questions of Naruto, and the blonde's responses were rather cutting for the usually goofy and lovesick Naruto. Sure, replied the silver-haired jounin with an eye smile that had all three genin looking at him in shock at how he does it. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I have a lot of likes and dislikes. My dreams are not for your young ears, and my goal is to never mind, not important. Sakura looked at her sensei in open-mouthed shock. They didn't learn a single thing about him other than his name, which they already knew before this. Turning to her two male teammates, she noticed that Naruto had a slight glare directed at their sensei, while Sasuke was so cool and seemingly ignoring everything around him. Sighing in happiness that she was now on his team, and was afforded the opportunity to watch her crush every day, she couldn't be happier and didn't want anything to ruin this, and that included Naruto Baka. Pinky, why don't you go first? Returned Kakashi with an eye smile at Sakura's frown and scowl at her nickname. I am Sakura Haruno, she started. I like, the starry-eyed stare and drool at the object of her affection left little to the imagination as to who she was referring, and I dislike Enopig and Naruto Baka. My dream is to, again with the drooling stare at the last Uchiha, accompanied by a giggle this time, and my goal is to start a family, another drool-filled stare that had Kakashi raising his eyebrows in shock at the overly obsessed fangirl. You next, broody, replied Kakashi with a shake of his head to clear it of the insanity that was his only female genin. Sasuke Uchiha, grunted out the last Uchiha unpleasantly, probably still suffering from internal convulsions from the fangirling he just witnessed. I have no likes, and I dislike most things. My dream, no, my goal is to kill a certain man and restore my clan, and I won't be held back by others. Kakashi couldn't believe that these two were the top shinobi in Kunoichi in the graduating class. They both suffered serious delusions and they were going to get someone killed one day. An overly obsessed fangirl with no strength or skills or even the desire to train and become a ninja, and a brooding nutcase, who is most likely an undiagnosed psychopath with both an inferiority and superiority complex according to his academy records. That neither of them value Naruto is a given after learning what he did, and made the blonde kid's earlier declaration about not training together pretty accurate, and also Sasuke was going to have problems with any teammate or fellow ninja of the leaf with an attitude like that. Okay Blondie, you're up, continued Kakashi seemingly uninterested, but in fact very curious about the boy he was most looking forward to working with and getting to know, as he reminded him so much of four of his most favorite people, Minato, Kushina, Rin and Obito. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, responded the blonde genin more seriously than what anyone expected from the usual loud-mouthed prankster, but still not without some of his original personality shining through. I like training in ramen, especially Ichiraku's, and dislike the 3 minutes it takes to heat instant ramen, and those who can't tell the difference between the kunai and the storage scroll it's sealed in. My dream and my goal is to be the greatest Hokage in Leaf's history and someday start a family. Kakashi was mildly impressed with Naruto's introduction. He seemed much more mature and prepared for what was to come. Even his proclamation of wanting to become Hokage was said so matter-of-factly that it didn't seem like a childish boast, but the realistic goal he would do everything in his power to make happen. The part about the kunai and storage scroll said a lot about how he viewed his Biju burden, and spoke well of his continued good spirit and attitude towards others despite having every reason to hate the village that scorned him his whole life. He actually found himself looking forward to training and working with Naruto, hoping to see more of his former friends in his new charge's actions and mannerisms, which were a perfect mix of all four of his deceased friends. He had the look of Minato, the mannerisms and verbal tics of Kushina, the burden of Rin and Kushina, and the attitude and openness of Obito. He really was a unique blend of traits and qualities, and Kakashi was actually finding himself excited to bring out the very best in one of his new students, and hoped they could get past their issues and work together. The problem he now faced was really on how to get these three very different young genin to work together, because he already knew that he couldn't fail this team with the last Uchiha on it, and the true legacy of the fourth. The civilian and shinobi councils both were putting pressure on the Hokage to pass Sasuke Uchiha and get him onto the mission rotation as soon as possible. Maybe that is the real reason Naruto was included in Sasuke's team. Both councils would never risk the Uchiha just to continue blocking Uzumaki from advancing, as was seemingly the case in the past. Okay, good, replied Kakashi to his young team of genin. Now, tomorrow we will have our first mission, so you better prepare tonight. What kind of mission? Asked Naruto in excitement. Survival exercises, responded the older jounin lazily, with just the four of us. What kind of mission is that? Asked Naruto, thinking they would be doing something awesome. Didn't we do survival exercises at the academy? Added Sakura softly. Oh, these aren't like the academy survival exercises at all, answered Kakashi with a bit of an eye smile that did not seem nearly as friendly as any earlier ones he sent to his genin. Only 33% passing rate, and all the failures get sent back to the academy for another term. What? Shouted both Naruto and Sakura almost simultaneously, while Sasuke also looked on in surprise and a little uncertainty. But we already graduated, continued Sakura. What about the exams we just took to pass the academy? Those were just to weed out the hopeless cases, responded Kakashi with a bit of pleasure leaking through his voice as he crushed the three genin's hopes. The ones that pass that test are just the ones who have the potential to become genin. I'm the one who gets to decide whether the three of you actually pass or fail. Be at Training Ground 7 by 5 a.m. tomorrow morning with all your gear and weapons, and don't eat breakfast unless you want to throw it up. With that, the jounin Kakashi disappeared with a shunshin in a poof of smoke that left Leaves and three angry and or worried potential genin behind. Sakura was terrified of another test, but hoped that her true love would win the day, and that her destiny to be with Sasuke would allow her to pass this test with ease. Sasuke was a bit worried about the test, only because it was another obstacle for him to get past on his bid to reach and surpass Itachi, and hoped his loser teammates didn't get in his way. Naruto was probably the only one of three with an idea of what was actually at stake. Having failed to become a genin now for 3 terms, he knew that he wasn't going back to the academy by any means. If that meant going all out and preparing for anything to ensure he passed, then his new sensei wouldn't know what hit him. He gave them all day and the night to prepare, and even the training ground where the test would go down. Naruto decided that it was about time he used his prankster mentality, and really tipped the scales in his favor, and decided to head to the mentioned training ground early to get a feel for the terrain, and start trapping the shit out of it in preparation. He also thought about what Kakashi did tell them, and realized that he was trying to set them up to fail by recommending they not eat and have any energy for the test, hoping they would handicap themselves from the start. The other part that stuck out to Naruto was the 5 a.m. start time, this being earlier than most ninja teams began their day, as most ninja did individual training in the morning before getting together with their teams. Naruto has been around the village enough at odd times to know that few missions started so early and less time sensitive, and wondered if his sensei was planning to be late as well again tomorrow, as that would fit into the misdirection he seemed to provide for the rest of the instructions. If he was wrong, it shouldn't be a big deal for Naruto, as he has only ever thrown up food when it was completely rotten or spoiled, and never from just overeating or overtraining. So, with those thoughts in mind, he started planning out how much time he had left until the test started tomorrow morning, and how many clones he wanted to put on this assignment versus continuing his training. Spawning the well over 800 clones now, he split them in half, and had one half continue the training schedule he had been operating under for the past few days before sending the remaining 400 clones to Training Ground 7 to first scout, and then trap the hell out of it while he went back to his physical exercises after upping the training weights to the 3rd setting. Naruto was able to get in almost 4 hours of speed and weight training, and had worked himself back to his normal speed, despite still having the training weights set to the third setting. He thought about reducing the training weights, so he could show off his greater speed, but thought it would probably be better to have that ace up his sleeve in case he needed something to tip the scales later, and wanted it to be a surprise the first time he went against Sasuke. Besides, getting his speed back to where it was in the academy with the training weights on was quite the feat of only 3 days of hardcore clone training, as most took weeks to get past the first setting. Naruto was really starting to see how amazing and powerful his new shadow clone technique really was when he thought back to how far he progressed or grew in just these last 3 days versus the 3 previous terms of academy instruction. He also realized that he was actually helped greatly by the stupid fox sealed in him, as all his sore muscles were constantly being filled with Biju chakra and refreshed and repaired from the overworking. This constant repairing of torn and sore muscles actually made them grow back stronger and denser, and allowed for his body to recover from injuries and ridiculous levels of training much quicker than most, and was a real benefit to the training method he had developed. Realizing that it was nearing dinner time, he decided to spawn another round of 800+ clones to reinforce both the others he already had training on their own and those trapping Training Ground 7 in preparation for tomorrow's Genin test. With that taken care of, he headed towards the Hokage's tower and the mission desk, where Iruka said he was working this afternoon to take him up on his offer of free Ichiraku ramen. It was as he was nearing the mission desk that he encountered his first glimpse of one of the other passing Genin teams, as Kurenai Yuhi was leading her 3 young Genin outside after seemingly finishing their first mission of their career based on the proud looks of accomplishment they all wore. Hello Naruto-kun, whispered a shy Hinata Hyuga as she saw the young blonde boy she had crushed on for years in the academy, which had both Kiba and Shino come to stops as they watched the usually loud-mouthed Uzumaki approach them, both noticing the more confident and casual way he moved since the end of their academy days not too long ago, and for Kiba, remembering the way the other boy had stood up for himself and put him in his place. Hi Hinata, greeted Naruto happily to the pale-eyed Hyuga heiress. Yuhi-san, Shino dog breath, he continued with nods to each of the other members of Team 8, until his greeting to Kiba resulted in said feral boy growling angrily and getting right up into Naruto's face, completely forgetting the thought he just had to show greater restraint in front of this particular young ninja. Any time dead last, sneered back Kiba threateningly, causing both Hinata and Kurenai to gasp at the tone and insult, but Naruto to simply tilt his head and continue to glare at Kiba until the other boy turned his head away in supplication, as the memory of earlier this morning played on a loop in front of his eyes and realized he didn't want to get shown up again. Kurenai was then very quick to pull Kiba away from Naruto, and get in between the 2 young Genin to diffuse any tension still lingering. Shino and Hinata were both watching wide-eyed, as their third teammate tried picking a fight with a fellow classmate who seemed to have significantly changed very recently, as he wasn't the loudmouthed hothead he was even last week. Instead, Naruto was the calm one dictating the pace and seemingly unconcerned about Kiba completely, showing a level of confidence that neither Shino or Hinata had ever seen from the usually worst student in their class. Deciding that something serious had really changed with Naruto, they both promised to themselves that they would be looking into this change, and hopefully trying to get Kiba to back off, as the Naruto they see now isn't the same doormat he was just a few days ago. Sorry Uzumaki-san, placated Kurenai after a moment of staring down her feral Genin and getting him to back off completely, and hang his head like a kicked puppy. We are going to be working on Kiba's temper and attitude a lot over the next few weeks. You might also need help removing the Uchiha pole of arrogance up his ass, mumbled Naruto quietly, but not nearly quiet enough to get past Kurenai or Shino's bugs, causing them to both look at Naruto in shock for taunting Kiba some more and also giving a very telling statement about his own arrogant-ass teammate. Oh well, see you all around. By Yuhi-san, by Shino, by Hinata, congratulations on passing. With that, Naruto left the somewhat stunned Team 8 behind as he entered the mission office by himself, ignoring the open-mouthed stare of several others who were nearby and witnessed the recent confrontation. Many of them wondered about the many changes to Naruto, as he wasn't overly loud or obnoxious, but still rather argumentative and a little hot-headed. Team 8 was probably analyzing the encounter the most, as it involved one of their own, and his relationship with what most people assumed was a useless waste of space in Naruto, but who in fact had started to show real promise of late. Naruto was oblivious to the stares and whispers that followed him practically everywhere, primarily just out of habit, but even he could tell that a lot of the looks he was receiving over the last few days were starting to change, especially among the ninja population. Where before he always saw raw hatred and or total disgust in the eyes and faces of both the civilians and shinobi alike, now he was starting to recognize other looks of speculation, or even a few small nods of acknowledgement. He hoped that it signified a change in how the village saw him as a whole, but knew he would have a long way to go until he won the acceptance of the Leaf Village. For now, he was content with his growing skills, newfound maturity and intelligence, and beginning the career he always dreamed of, and would worry about all the other things he couldn't completely control at a later point. He quickly found Irika-sensei sitting at the same mission desk he often would watch his surrogate grandfather, the Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi, operate out of during the days when he could get away from the paperwork in his office. Unfortunately, he also noticed that his favorite teacher was in the process of being yelled at by an overweight civilian demanding that somebody complete the D-rank mission he requested of painting his fence. "If the painting is pretty straightforward, and you don't mind me working on it, I bet I can knock it out pretty quickly," interrupted Naruto as he approached the pair, and instantly had the yelling civilian turn towards him with a glare. "You?" questioned the middle-aged man with the small beady brown eyes as he continued to glare at the young blonde, weighing his hatred of the demon child against his desire to get his fence painted. "If you can get it done before the sun rises tomorrow, I will allow it." "Great, just show my team where you need us," responded Naruto, who quickly formed a cross-hand seal and spawned 10 shadow clones, who were all lined up standing at attention, ready for orders. "Is that all right with you, Irika-sensei?" "Sure, Naruto, and thanks," responded his former academy teacher in somewhat stunned shock at seeing the usually hyperactive and obnoxious boy acting so mature and professional, and also really helping them out by taking that mission today. So, with the 10 Naruto clones following the older civilian man back to his house to paint his fence, the real Naruto turned to the still somewhat stunned Irika and grinned wide, showing off his teeth. He was inordinately pleased with his last-second idea, and that it helped out Irika was even better, and now he would even be able to get a D-rank mission under his belt. He had always dreamed of elaborate and dangerous missions involving rescuing princesses or saving towns, but he had seen all the genin around the village always seemingly doing chores for the civilian population and knew that was the reality of a new genin. "So, Irika-sensei, are you ready for some Ichiraku ramen?" replied Naruto with a definite twinkle of anticipation in his sky-blue eyes, as his mouth started to salivate in preparation. Sure, Naruto, just give me a second to fill out this mission log, sign it, and turn it in before I can leave," responded Irika with an amused grin as he was again shaking his head in shock and exasperation at the antics of his young blonde friend, who really was the #1 most unpredictable ninja, especially when ramen was a possible reward. With the paperwork done, the unusual pair headed to Ichiraku stand for a well-deserved dinner and chance for the two to catch up and chat about everything that has been happening in the last few days since the Mizuki incident. After sitting down and placing their orders, Naruto quickly launched into everything he had been doing since leaving Irika-sensei to go to the hospital on the night of Mizuki's defection, including the tons of training he had been getting in. Irika was beyond impressed when listening to everything his young student had been up to, and couldn't believe how much of a game-changer the shadow clone technique would end up being for the young genin. He promised after dinner to give Naruto some help and pointers on the echolocation jutsu, as well as the sensory enhancement one that he couldn't seem to get exactly right. He also promised to review the camping survival suite of jutsu, to make sure Naruto wasn't missing anything regarding that suite of jutsus, and show him a few others he might like to learn and incorporate into his arsenal. Naruto was easily convinced of Irika-sensei's greatness, and couldn't wait to get started learning new jutsu, or perfecting the ones he was struggling with. So after they finished their meals, they headed to the abandoned training ground near his apartment, where he had been doing most of his clone training, and Irika got his first look at a Naruto clone training session. To say he was shocked to see the organization, and just the numbers of Naruto clones running around training was a complete understatement. But, after looking over all the different areas of training clones, he was beyond convinced that Naruto was both ready for his help, but also that his goal of becoming a Hokage was a lot closer than he thought this morning. For the next hour, Irika went through all the jutsu Naruto was learning to ensure he was doing everything correct, and also to check his work and verify that he really was ready for the next stage in his training. His survival camping skills were rated as top-notch, with him only needing experience now, and his trap skills continued to impress even Jounin-level opponents. His henge and replacement were both superb, with his added physical transformation blowing Irika's mind when Naruto demonstrated it for him, and also told him how he was using that transformation to get his shopping done much easier and cheaper. His shadow clone was at ridiculous levels, and even his basic Bunshin clone was starting to form almost looking as he was supposed to, a real testament to Naruto's continued training in chakra control. That was also a real surprise for the academy teacher, as he watched his 3-day-old genin fight shadow clones among the treetops without a single slip or misstep, really showing how far his chakra control had come. The echolocation jutsu was next, and Naruto demonstrated it for Irika, who was able to easily see where his student struggled and knew he could help. It was a familiar jutsu for the former Anbu Dolphin, who used the echolocation jutsu himself to develop into one of the best non-Inuzuka trackers and sensors in Konoha, and the reason he was recruited into Anbu during his Chunin days. It also tipped Naruto off as to how his former teacher was always able to find him when few others ever could, and he insisted the older man show him everything he could about being a sensor. That led to the sensory enhancement jutsu, which Iruka was able to explain and work on with Naruto until he could successfully pull chakra into his ears, nose, and eyes to increase the sensitivity each organ had, which felt a little confusing and disorienting at first but got easier to understand the more he used it. Iruka was so proud of everything Naruto was capable of already performing, and what he was able to learn on the fly after just a few attempts to show and demonstrate all the parts to it. Likewise, once they finished with everything Naruto already knew about or was at least working on, Iruka decided to show his young student a few others he thought might be helpful. The rope escape technique and the temporary paralysis techniques were E and D rank techniques respectively, and Naruto was able to quickly pick them both up enough to start really practicing them on his own later. He did, however, draw the line when Naruto asked about learning the body flicker technique, or Shunshin, made famous by Susui Uchiha in the Third Great Shinobi War. He promised him that if he was still interested in a few weeks, that Iruka would gladly show him the very helpful technique and that maybe next time they got together they could spar some too. Despite having been in A and B years earlier, Iruka had not practiced much over the last 5 years of working in the academy, and a lot of his skills had atrophied considerably, and he could use the workout after only an hour trying to train with Naruto left him winded and needing a break. When the pair finally said their goodbyes outside of Naruto's apartment, it was nearing 9 p.m., and Naruto was turning in a little early to make sure he got plenty of rest before his Genin test with Kakashi tomorrow morning. Before going to sleep, he started dispelling all the clones he had setting up the traps in Training Ground 7, so he knew what to expect and where everything was, leaving several dozen to continue scouting the training ground all night to ensure nobody came in and messed with his preparations tomorrow he was taking down a Jounin. Chapter 4 Bell Test. Naruto was woken at 4:30 a.m. by a pair of bored shadow clones lingering around Training Ground 7, who decided to have a small spar and dispelled each other simultaneously while providing the cringe of new memories that woke the young blonde. After groaning in frustration, he simply got up and put on his new clothes, his brain assimilating the 2 sets of memories he just got and his mood slowly improving as his anticipation for today started to leak through. Putting on one of his new sets of clothes, he marveled at how much better quality they were than anything he owned previously. Clearly, being overcharged for goods wasn't the only thing the shopkeepers did to keep him miserable. The sturdy heavyweight black pants and overshirt would hold up to quite the beating, and the surprisingly soft mesh undershirt fit his torso comfortably and left him looking very different from what he had in the past in the bright orange jumpsuit. He decided to go with the boot-style shinobi sandals in black, and for his only bit of color, he included 2 dark orange bandolier straps that he crisscrossed over his chest rather tightly that he used to hold several smaller kunai and shuriken pouches on top of the larger ones he had on each thigh. His hope was to someday incorporate a sword and sheath into the bandolier, and or even a large storage scroll like the Forbidden One to hold all of his stuff. For now, though, he spawned a pair of clones to make him a large breakfast and pick up his apartment from yesterday's mess. After learning at least a dozen different easy recipes for every meal, he was happily making a large omelet with a few vegetables mixed in that were almost completely overpowered by the egg, cheese, and sausage he added as well. He figured that if he was going to force himself to eat vegetables, that he should at least try to hide them in other foods he really liked so as to at least get some in his diet. He wasn't too worried about Kakashi's warning either, as he didn't expect the seemingly lazy shinobi to be on time, giving him plenty of chance to digest, and a lack of food for him would be very detrimental to his chances of success. Strolling into the training ground at exactly 5 a.m., he was easily able to spot his 2 waiting teammates by the small bridge that crossed the stream running through Training Ground 7's main clearing. Sasuke was leaning against one end of the small wooden footbridge with his hands across his chest in his classic brooding pose, while Sakura was sitting by a nearby tree stump with stars in her eyes as she drooled over her dark-haired teammate in a very stalkerish way that creeped Naruto out, probably almost as much as it bothered Sasuke himself. They both glanced up when they heard him approach, and then did double takes as they saw him in his new outfit, looking very different from his academy days with only the tiniest amount of orange, and a dark orange at that. "What are you wearing, Naruto Baka?" shouted Sakura once she realized that her usually bright orange teammate looked completely different just from wearing black and more normal ninja attire, and not sure why it bothered her. "Stop trying to be cool like Sasuke-kun." Nice clothes, dope," greeted Sasuke with a dismissive sniff to his other male teammate while completely ignoring the female one who had been pestering him for the better part of a half an hour, before going back to his brooding. "Thanks, team," replied Naruto calmly, and almost politely if not for the casual name-calling that was pretty standard with the two, as he too decided to simply ignore his female teammate and look around the clearing to get his bearings on where everything he set up was. "I think I am going to go check something out, be right back." With that, Naruto quickly jumped out of the clearing and into the surrounding trees so he could be out of view of his teammates before spawning 800+ clones. These clones had the express purpose of hiding among the numerous traps, keeping them all up and running or replacing ones that need it, and lending numbers in support of the original when the fighting finally came down. Several of the clones used the henge transformation jutsu to become small woodland creatures or pieces of debris to blend into their surroundings, and a few even turned into logs and pieces of branches for kawaii material. The creature set up a rather large network throughout the training ground that left almost every square inch of the place in the viewing range of at least 3 clones at all times, a necessity if he wanted to have any chance of pulling this off. Grabbing a protein bar in case Kakashi does arrive close to on time, he quickly eats it to restore some of the energy he used for his mass clones, and then returns to the clearing with his teammates thinking of anything else that might help. Realizing that Kakashi's words from yesterday were in fact true, and that he didn't in any way plan to incorporate or include his teammates in his plan, he thought about how he could change that. "Look guys," started Naruto, once back in the clearing and facing Sasuke and Sakura to get their attention. "If this is really a survival exercise, Kakashi is most likely going to try to split us up, knowing we are always more of a threat when together. I say, we team up and hit him hard and fast. It's going to be really hard, he is a jounin after all, but together we stand a much better chance." "I don't need help from losers," responded Sasuke harshly, and with a glare directed at first Naruto, and then Sakura, causing the earlier to scowl and the later to break down and cry hysterically. "Real nice team," clapped back Naruto as he saw the third teammate shrink into herself and sob like a baby, knowing that she would be even more useless now than she would have been if Sasuke had simply included her. "At least I offered this time," continued Naruto more to himself, before moving closer to Sakura and the tree stump she was sitting on, and awkwardly standing nearby. "Don't worry about the team, Sakura, he just doesn't know how to play with others. You are a great ninja." Thanks Naruto," sniffled Sakura slowly as she tried to get herself back under control, completely missing the shocked face of Naruto, who was surprised not to be yelled at by the object of his academy crush, having very few memories of her or anyone else really saying nice things to him, and not really knowing how to respond. "Why, you're welcome," he eventually stuttered out, before deciding to simply sit down and wait for their lazy sensei, wondering how long it would be. It only took about 10 minutes of silence before Naruto was again up on his feet and antsy about moving around doing something productive, but knowing he couldn't leave the training ground left him with few alternatives. Deciding that he had nothing else he could think of to do while sitting around that didn't require too much chakra, as he was trying to get his reserves back up after the massive shadow clone spawning, he remembered a scroll and meditating as both a chakra control exercise and a calming recentering. Figuring he had nothing but time to lose, and he was losing that already by waiting on his sensei, Naruto closed his eyes and thought back to the instructions one of his clones read about internalizing your breathing and focus. "Yo!" came the lazy greeting from Kakashi after he appeared in a swirl of leaves near the tree stump that Sakura was sitting upon, causing the 3 genin to react each in different ways. "You're late!" shouted Sakura predictably, although to be fair, he was over 3 hours late. "HN," responded Sasuke, though nobody understood what that meant and continued ignoring him or drooling over how cool he is. "I'm awake!" came Naruto's exclamation after being abruptly wrenched out of a deep meditative state that he managed to maintain for a very respectable 2 hours, before being interrupted. "Sorry, I got lost on the road of life," answered Kakashi easily, and almost disinterestedly, before looking around the clearing and getting a slight feeling of something he couldn't quite put his finger on, causing his glances around to increase and the feeling of anticipation almost to build. "What kind of lame excuse is that?" shouted Sakura in near hysterics, at the same time as Naruto also responded. "Was it a fun road at least?" he asked, seemingly serious, and neither Kakashi or his 2 teammates could guess if he was joking for a long moment before he continued, "And are you on that road every day?" Yes, responded the one-eyed jounin slowly, wondering if Naruto was his new favorite for indulging his excuses or if Naruto was just discovering if he was always going to be late. "Cool," came the flat reply that left everybody somewhat confused and answered nothing for Kakashi, and for some reason didn't lessen the somewhat lingering feeling of anticipation that seemed to be growing. "So," started Kakashi after several awkward moments of silence, as he looked back and forth at his 3 genin, "today's test is pretty simple. You have until noon to get one of the bells I have tied to my waist." "But there are only 2 bells," screeched Sakura loudly. "Yes," replied Kakashi with an eye smile, while cringing on the inside at the girl's volume level and seeming to need to have everything spelled out for her. "Only 2 of you will pass. The other will be sent back to the academy for another term and be tied to a tree over here while the rest of us eat lunch," he finished as he pulled out 3 bento boxes and placed them on the tree stump next to a small clock that had both Sakura and Sasuke's stomachs growling in hunger. Kakashi looked over all 3 potential genin, and was pleased to see the desire and hear the stomach pains of Sakura and Sasuke as they looked at the food with longing, while somewhat disappointed that Naruto wasn't displaying those same needs. In fact, Naruto didn't look upset, tired, hungry, or stressed at all. He seemingly was just waiting for him to start with a quiet confidence that Kakashi found cute for a genin that was going up against a jounin that outclassed him in every way. Oh well, the kid would learn the hard way once the bell test began, chuckled Kakashi to himself quietly as he gave one more look around the clearing as the feeling of many others watching was still very strong, but he easily dismissed it. What did he need to worry about with a trio of fresh out of the academy genin? So, began Kakashi slowly with a one-eyed glare directed at Naruto, who met his look with an intense and ready look of his own. You ignored the rules again and ate breakfast, didn't you? You just said not to eat if we didn't want to throw it up, answered Naruto evenly, and maybe with a bit of sarcasm near the end. I have no intention of throwing up the breakfast I ate over 3 hours ago, sensei. Kakashi's glare intensified at the young blonde's remarks, because he both saw through his suggestion. He tried to word it as an order, and called him out on the order not having any effect when he was 3 hours late, and was well fed to boot. There was just something about the quiet confidence of Naruto that was unsettling to the veteran jounin. His expectations of the village Jinchuriki had been ridiculously shattered after just a day with the outdated and biased information he had been operating under. Now he was faced with what appeared to be a ready shinobi, with none of the arrogant bravado most new genin displayed, and that smile hinted at something he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to discover. Just remember, started Kakashi, getting the three gain's attention, and deciding to ignore the uneasy feeling he got every time he looked at Naruto. You better come at me with intent to kill if you want any chance at getting a bell. What? Screeched Sakura again. What if we hurt you? Haha, laughed the silver-haired jounin sensei patronizingly. You are genin, you're 100 years too late to be able to even touch me, he continued in a goading fashion, let alone hurt me. At the completely dismissive comment, Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously, hating to be underestimated and not seen as a threat, and with now something serious to prove, all bets were off. He instead decided to start gathering and building his chakra for another overcharged mass shadow clone once they were given the go-ahead. Kakashi, for his part, seemed to notice his blonde student bearing down on his temper, and mistakenly thought the loud mouth was preparing for an ineffectual verbal blow-up, and likewise wasn't prepared when said blonde lifted his eyes and he saw the normally sky-blue eyes bleeding almost reddish-purple as a slight smell of ozone seemed to be growing. "Wanna bet, Kakashi-sensei," growled the Naruto, whose whole body was practically buzzing with anticipation and the excess build-up of chakra as he brought his hands together in his now favorite cross-hand seal and held it there waiting on the silver-haired jounin to start the test as his chakra just continued to build. Stuttered Kakashi for a moment as he looked at his youngest and supposed to be the worst student in the recent graduating class gathering Kage-level amounts of chakra, and wondered if maybe his students could in fact hurt him very much. Begin. The moment the word left his lips, the entire training ground exploded in a chakra-fueled cloud of smoke that could be felt throughout Konoha by even the most basic sensor, and to those sensitive to such things, it was like a blinding supernova. Kakashi himself cringing violently, remembering that day 12 years ago when the Kyuubi descended upon his beloved village, and the wave of killing intent laced with chakra was even more overwhelming than this expression of just pure chakra buildup was. Thankfully, the chakra was pure Naruto's and none of the Kyuubi's chakra had bled through, which was good, and that the nine-tailed demon wasn't influencing or in control of Naruto, but also shocking that Naruto could produce this much chakra on his own. When the smoke finally cleared, Kakashi's eyes felt like they were playing tricks on him as well over 1,000 shadow clones of Naruto filled every bare space in and around the clearing of Training Ground 7, further than his eye could see, and everyone had a look of determined anticipation. Before he could really even register them all, he was being leapt upon by dozens of the nearest Naruto clones, who instead of just charging blindly, tried working in smaller groups to cover each other's weaknesses and overwhelm the much more experienced jounin who was given no time to mount any kind of defensive plan. Naruto knew his clones had to keep the pressure on Kakashi and not let him get space to maneuver, and turn this battle back to his favor. Likewise, he had several of the newest clones incorporating his many prank items in order to tangle up and bog the older ninja down with paint, honey, and ninja wire traps in a relentless stream that probably frustrated Kakashi more than hurt him. But the constant pressure was doing several things, the most important being that the real Naruto was learning quickly as his sensei quickly began tearing through his clones with minimalist moves that slowly Naruto was learning and incorporating into his haphazard taijutsu. It also provided the decoy for Naruto to again try and get his teammates to join him in attacking Kakashi together, though after Sasuke took a jealous look at all the Narutos currently fighting their sensei, he scoffed and left the clearing saying he would do it on his own, with Sakura following after him like a lost puppy. The final advantage of so many attackers was that Kakashi wasn't in control of the flow of the fight. As he was constantly tearing through the ranks of Naruto's clones, he was unaware that he was also being slightly directed and led to the edge of the clearing where the majority of Naruto's traps and reserve forces were stationed and waiting in ambush. Then Kakashi seemed to have understood what was happening just before he reached the tree-lean traps, and tried to make a stand in the clearing, and prevent the fight from moving into the trees where he could sense several traps and other things waiting for him. His next few moments were spent spewing out fireballs that did significant damage to Naruto's nearest clone forces, and made the original realize he would need more help to keep up the assault on his sensei. With almost half of the most recent spawning of clones already taken out of the fight in the first 5 minutes, Naruto was down to about 500 clones still engaging Kakashi at the other end of the clearing from where the original was trying to plan out the continued strategy. He ended up making another 2 pairs of clones, this time hinging one into Sakura and the other into Sasuke, where he sent them with another clone of himself to try again and convince them to help. Hoping that seeing the other teammate already helping it would sway the other, and then not telling them that he tricked them once they were working together. With that part done, he quickly ate down a pair of nutrient bars to regain some strength, which along with the returning chakra of his continually being destroyed clones, left him with enough energy for another large round of clones, this time only numbering around 600 to reinforce the others. It was at that point, however, that Kakashi changed up his strategy, and instead of standing still and mowing down all comers as he had been doing, he instead started using the Shunshin to escape the attacking waves and trying to get behind them or lose them completely. This didn't work as well as he would have liked, however, because the moment he arrived anywhere he was attacked by the nearest clone, disguised as animals, branches, and debris, and once they were dispelled the rest of the horde now had a bead on their location to converge and start the process all over again. This game of cat and mouse was better for Naruto's clones as it slowed down their destruction considerably, as the attacks were now smaller at first, and over before too many got involved as Kakashi moved on to other locations. It seemed he was both avoiding Naruto's clones, and scouting for the real Naruto and the other two, to test them individually. Him trying to avoid clones to not alert them to where he was, had the added benefit of giving Naruto and his clones more time to learn about their sensei's skills and convince Sasuke to join them. Sakura joined the moment she saw Sasuke was with Naruto. Even if she didn't know it was another clone of Naruto hinged to look like her crush, she was in the moment he asked her. Sasuke was harder to convince, as he didn't see Sakura working with Naruto to be any great asset, and it wasn't until Sasuke witnessed an ambush on a nearby Kakashi that he felt that he could at least use his teammates as distractions while he showed off his Uchiha superiority and got both bells for himself. With the 3 of them now working together, Naruto sneakily hid the 2 hinged clones once they were within visual range of the real ones to not give up his ruse. The 2 hinged Sakura and Sasuke Naruto clones were quickly met up with another Naruto clone, and began acting as a decoy team that Naruto had go around to the other side of the training ground, making a good bit of noise, to prepare for the next confrontation with Kakashi. It didn't take the clone team long to find Kakashi still attacking Naruto's clones en masse, and allow themselves to be seen before ducking back into the trees towards the main ambush site. Kakashi was just about at his wits' end dealing with all of these shadow clones, and getting increasingly frustrated that he couldn't simply overpower a finishing move and clear out the whole lot of the clones without the risk of killing the real Genins among them. He was also very reluctant to have to use his hidden Sharingan eye on a new Genin, and instead kept it covered with his slanted Hideite as he took out that frustration on the next several batches of clones. A nice Chidori rainstorm would take care of this entire mass of clones in seconds, but would most likely also completely fry and kill the 3 real Genin among them. Instead, he decided to throw out a shuriken rather lower than normal before performing the Shuriken Kage Bunshin and taking out over 24 of the Naruto clones in one throw. By throwing low, he also avoided a possible lethal hit to one of his real Genin if they were among the clones in the attack range, and allowed him to replicate the move another 10 times, quickly eliminating Naruto clones by the dozens. The disadvantage to this technique though was shown a minute later, when several Naruto clones had seen and studied the move enough to replicate it on their own, and soon the amount of weapons flying back at the Jounin were significantly greater than before. He had to abandon his makeshift perch under the growing onslaught, and return to using the body flicker technique and many Kawarimi exchanges to escape the seemingly never-ending pursuit of his supposedly worst student. Even the woodland creatures, and branches on the grounds and in the trees ended up being Naruto clones, after Kakashi witnessed several of each come to life in order to attack him during his many escapes. The next time he paused for a moment coming out of another Shunshin, he changed up his strategy again and spawned his own trio of shadow clones before descending underground and letting his clones continue to eliminate the Naruto clones while he went hunting for some Genin. It took almost no time to find them hiding half-assed outside the main clearing so they could see, almost not even trying, and making him somewhat disappointed that they didn't have something better planned after the pretty impressive start. Popping up out of the earth behind them was child's play, as the 3 fresh Genin gave no indication they had any idea he was among them, until he went to pull all 3 and bury in the ground only for them to explode as shadow clones. Shit, he cursed as a veritable wave of shuriken came flying at him, after pausing at the explosion of his supposed Genin and being caught flat-footed again. Damn, shouted the nearest Naruto clone, who thought they were finally going to get the more skilled Jounin, before sending out the memory of Kakashi traveling through the ground to avoid detection. Soon, with the liberal use of the newly learned echolocation jutsu, every Naruto clone was able to follow Kakashi around the training ground with amazing precision. Though that also included the silver-haired man's clones as well, so they were currently tracking 4 separate chakra signatures. Make that 3. Naruto didn't have any of the same restrictions as his sensei, and was aiming to kill every time, and the clones only needed a single hit to dispel, so within minutes of using the echolocation jutsu he had tracked and eliminated all 3 Kakashi shadow clones, until he was just dogging the original. Throughout this now rather long-running battle, Naruto had been trying continually to get his hands on the bells at Kakashi's waist without much luck, though he had come surprisingly close on several occasions. He decided that he needed to step up the pressure on Kakashi, and grabbed a nearby squirrel and then hinged several clones into his teammates, and sent them off to be ready for their sensei to appear in a shunshin, grabbing more small animals along the way. When Kakashi appeared at the next ambush site following a hinged clone of Sasuke, Naruto had his Sakura clone get on the ground among the group of other clones with the squirrel bleeding out from the fresh wound. Kakashi's Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu predictably tore through the huddled clones, dispersing them in clouds of smoke that obscured the view for a moment, and covered the high-pitched scream of pain his Sakura clone made upon the other clones' destructions. That scream had Kakashi instantly stop and pale completely, fearing that he may have accidentally just killed one of the genin he was testing, and terrified the moment the smoke cleared and a heavily bleeding Sakura was lying collapsed on the ground. The older silver-haired ninja froze completely at the scene in front of him, shocked that his overconfidence against his new genin had allowed the current tragedy to take place, and wondering if there was any way to save the young girl. "Don't move," called a frantic Kakashi as he rushed to his downed genin in order to provide aid and see if there was anything he could do to help, and was then shocked when he reached the bloody scene and things didn't completely add up. He didn't have any time to consider what was wrong, as the moment he bent over the downed genin, said genin and several others that were hiding nearby accosted him and clung to any part of his body they could. 2 clones even managed to get their hands on the bells before the veteran ninja realized what was happening and lashed out harshly to the unfortunate clones, who suffered quick deaths along with all the other nearby clones. With the dispersal of several clones almost simultaneously, the large cloud of obscuring smoke actually helped hide the next wave of clones that arrived to fight for the bells. That fight was quick and brutal though, as Kakashi was no longer underestimating his genin and dealing truly brutal attacks that had the original Naruto wincing in memory of the many very painful deaths he was experiencing one on top of the other. He was not making any real headway against his sensei, but kept getting close to the bells and forcing Kakashi to continually try and defend against his many theft attempts. It was at this point though that the real genin arrived, with Sasuke throwing out a great fireball that destroyed the dozens of clones that had been engaging Kakashi, and keeping him busy. "No team," shouted Naruto as he saw the fireball heading into a largely concentrated area of Naruto clones and traps that he knew couldn't react quick enough to avoid, unlike their now freed sensei. With his own teammate clearing all of his numbers near and around Kakashi, the 3 original genin were left too exposed in the now empty clearing to do anything other than succumb to the small hits by their sensei that knocked them all out in seconds, and bringing the bell test to an abrupt end. Kakashi though wasn't able to get to Naruto though, as his hidden clones all throughout the training ground instantly came to life the moment he was knocked out, and engaged the older ninja en masse, while other clones pulled him to safety and woke him up. That wake-up didn't last long though, as Kakashi created another pair of his own clones. He had literally tear through Naruto's remaining ones until there were none remaining, and he knocked out the young blonde genin again. "Well, your teamwork is absolute shit," came the clear voice of Kakashi, cutting through the groggy head fog as Naruto slowly seemed to be coming to, and finding himself tied uncomfortably to a tree while his sensei and teammates sat around nearby. "Though I will say, you really surprised me." "Really?" asked a hopeful Sakura from her spot near the tree stump she was at when this test began. "Not you, Pinky," continued Kakashi with an eye smile directed at Sakura, before sweeping his gaze across Sasuke to rest on Naruto. "You and Amo King here were as pathetic as I expected you to be." He trailed off while searching Naruto's face intently. "Naruto on the other hand, well, he just showed me something pretty impressive." "What? Naruto Baka?" shouted Sakura in disbelief. "The dope," growled the glaring Sasuke, trying to kill both his sensei and teammate with just his stare, as he curled and flexed his hands into fists repeatedly, seemingly unable to accept that anybody else might deserve praise or have some skill. "Yes," answered Kakashi plainly and definitively. He had several very good and unique plans and strategies that he wasn't afraid to try and adapt around, trapped and scouted the hell out of this training ground, came prepared and held his own against a severely greater opponent. "I'd say he was hands down the best of you all." With those words, Sasuke practically growled into a scream of rage and disbelief that he would ever look up at the dobe as a greater ninja, and couldn't fathom how the dead last had already surpassed him in seemingly no time at all. Sakura too was in disbelief, But where her dark-haired teammate struggled with his own comparison to Naruto, she knew her strengths lie elsewhere and didn't really think anything Naruto did was any better than everything that Sasuke did. Naruto, though, was a different story. Never had another ninja complimented him in such a positive way about his own growing ninja skills, and he was almost bursting with pride and determination to keep improving. Take that, team. So, did we pass? Asked Naruto after a moment of reveling in his excitement for the received praise, and realizing he hadn't heard about that yet. No, Team 7 did not pass, answered Kakashi slowly, seeing if anybody would pick up on it. Only Team 7? Asked Naruto with a tilted head as he thought over the words of his silver-haired sensei, and found that phrasing unusual. See, continued Kakashi, seemingly talking to Sasuke and Sakura, before turning and smiling at Naruto, he noticed it immediately. Naruto passed? Screamed in outrage Sakura, finally registering what was being said and inferred by Kakashi's words. He demonstrated enough to show me what he is capable of, and I was very pleased with everything I saw from him. He thought and acted as a true shinobi and teammate, and if it's what he wants, I will sign off on him entering the reserve genin pool until a spot somewhere else opens up, answered Kakashi plainly to the three young ninja, who all reacted very differently. What? Screamed Sakura in outrage, complaining about fairness and repeating how much better Sasuke was over Naruto at everything, while said dark-haired boy just seethed quietly on the verge of a blow-up at any moment. If it's what I want? Asked the curious Naruto, cutting off Sakura's incessant chatter and the emo's brooding, and getting a large and somewhat creepy-looking eye smile from Kakashi. Yes, that is an option for you, Kakashi continued, seemingly happily that the young blonde figured out to look underneath the underneath, and not just accept straight away. Or you could try the bell test again as Team 7 with Pinky and Amo King over here after lunch, but if you fail to get a bell, the deal's off, and you are back to the academy too. It didn't take Naruto too long to think his options through. Having known and heard about the reserve genin, he knew it probably wasn't a great fit for him. He wasn't well liked, and chances of being selected by other genin or chunin and jounin instructors for anything would constantly be a battle, even if his skills were adequate. That was the real problem though. Reserve genin didn't have instructors. Everything they learned had to be done by themselves, and likewise few if any ever make it past the genin program and into the higher ranks of ninja, hence the somewhat mocking term of career genin. I think Team 7 needs another chance at the bell test, sensei, responded Naruto after several long moments of contemplation, and causing both Sasuke and Sakura to sputter in shock that Naruto would choose the team option and likewise give them both another chance to become ninja of the leaf. Good answer, replied Kakashi with that weird eye smile thing he seemingly does often, directed at the young blonde. Okay, Sasuke and Sakura, here are your lunches. Eat up, you are going to need your strength. I will be back in 15 minutes to start the bell test. Kakashi-sensei? Aren't you going to let me down to eat lunch too? Asked Naruto just before his sensei left, and getting the other two to look up at the interaction, finding the whole thing rather odd and still wondering what exactly was going on as they opened the tasty bento boxes, both beyond hungry. Nope, you ignored my instructions yesterday and ate this morning. These two haven't eaten anything and need their strength if they are going to help get bells, answered Kakashi flippantly, before turning to Sasuke and Sakura and continuing in a serious tone, don't share your lunch with Naruto. With that, Kakashi gave a sarcastic little wave to the fuming and sputtering Naruto, before he vanished in a swirl of leaves to who knows where and leaving the three young genin alone in the clearing. Naruto was beyond pissed and pretty damn hungry after everything he put himself through this morning, and couldn't believe that after all that, he was still right back in the same position as he was this morning without a team or sensei. He was seriously having second thoughts now on his choice, and thinking he may have just been better off as a reserve genin, since he was pretty exhausted still from chakra drain and didn't think he would be able to convince Sasuke and Sakura to work with him again. Here, Naruto, you can have some of my lunch, came the small voice of Sakura as she shuffled forward a bit and moved to start feeding an absolutely stunned Naruto. You are going to need your strength too, and you can probably help a lot more than I can, she finished somewhat dejectedly. You can have some of mine too, came the unexpected reply from Sasuke as he too started forward to feed the final member of their team. You too, Sakura, we are all going to need to be at our best, this guy is no joke. What is this? Came the loud shout of Kakashi as he appeared in another swirl of leaves just as all three students started eating from the two bento boxes, and causing them all to stiffen in fear at getting caught breaking the rules. Stuttered Sakura in shock and fear, as the three young ninjas all cringed at the anger they saw on their sensei's face, all three expecting to be exploded at any moment. You all pass, announced Kakashi to the now stunned and shocked faces of the three newest genin of Konoha, who all had no idea just what the hell was happening. Huh? Questioned Naruto confusedly, trying to follow along with his new sensei's way of thinking. Team 7 has passed. You proved you can work together. The individual skills will come with practice and hard work, but I am pleased with what I've seen, explained Kakashi calmly as he smiled at his new genin team, and enjoyed their looks of confusion turned to happiness. We will meet here every morning at 8 a.m. for some training and teamwork drills, and then do a mission or two in the afternoon. Awesome! Cheered Naruto excitedly, before remembering his earlier exchange with his tardy sensei and asking somewhat apprehensively so as not to upset his new sensei, are you going to be spending some time on the road of life again tomorrow? Came the unknowing reply from Kakashi as he thought about how to answer the question while looking back and forth between his new genin while tearing the ropes around Naruto, and not coming up with anything concrete. See ya tomorrow. With those words, he disappeared in another shunshin, leaving the 3 new genin of Team 7 alone in Training Ground 7, all with varying levels of smiles, or smirks in Sasuke's case, on their faces. Even Naruto, who was realizing his sensei never answered him, and was probably constantly late while on the road of life, couldn't keep the happy and proud smile off his face at finally being a real ninja of the leaf. Turning to his new teammates, he also realized that they had a lot of training to do, in order to be ready to fight and protect the village or accomplish any of the more difficult missions. Well, started Naruto to get both of his excited teammates' attention, do we want to train together? Or spend time getting to know each other better? I train alone, came Sasuke's quick and predictable reply. I am not going out with you, Naruto Baka, shouted Sakura after a moment of thinking over what her teammates said before turning to Sasuke. Do you want to celebrate, Sasuke-kun? Grunted the monosyllabic Uchiha, before turning around and taking off down the street as fast as he could, leaving a dejected Sakura behind that Naruto usually would have tried cheering up or asking out himself if she hadn't just screamed out her refusal to the unasked question, but just couldn't find it in him today to do so. See ya tomorrow then, replied a somewhat dejected Naruto, who thought now that they were teammates they would also become friends, while a distracted Sakura watched the object of her obsession recede in the distance, and ignored the loud blonde completely as she lived in her own world. Naruto's dejection though wouldn't last but a moment once he realized that he was now a real ninja, and that he was one big step closer to becoming Hokage and a respected member of Konoha. Deciding to treat himself to an Ichiraku ramen feast in celebration of his greatest personal accomplishment to date was definitely in order, and led to him running happily through the streets of his beloved village. He ignored the stares and mutters even easier now than before, having been validated by the last few days of accomplishing goals, becoming a real ninja, learning of his burden, and just not caring anymore about the idiots in the village who couldn't tell he wasn't the Kyuubi. With Kakashi reporting to Hokage, Team 7 under Kakashi Hatake passed, came the flat response of the silver-haired Jounin after appearing inside the Hokage's office to see his fellow Jounin instructors still there, and now staring at him in shock with their mouths hanging open and disbelief on their faces. What, you passed the team? Came the shocked voice of Kurina Yuhi, Jounin leader of Team 8, and relatively new Jounin and Genjutsu mistress, who knew and hung out in the same circles as Kakashi, and could hardly believe what she heard. What can I say, they worked well as a team and Naruto almost got me several times, and probably would have if it had continued much longer, came the very matter-of-fact response, that had the stunned crowd gasping even more at the revelation that the demon child was that good when his academy results spoke of an abject failure in every sense. But he was the dead last? Came the disbelieving voice of a random Jounin in the back of the room, that just had Kakashi shrug nonchalantly. He's not the dead last anymore, came the swift reply from Kakashi. You all had to have felt that chakra spike a half an hour ago. He created over 1,000 shadow clones in the blink of an eye. Give him 1 month, and he will be ready to take on any Chunin in Konoha. Oh please, came the sarcastic and disbelieving voice of Ebisu, a Tokubetsu Jounin specializing in training elite ninjas, a sentiment that seemed shared by the majority of the room minus only Kakashi and the Hokage himself. How about a bet? Came the goading response of Kakashi, to his former classmate and fellow ninja. Naruto fights Kotetsu Higain or Izumo Kamizuki in 1 month from today. If he wins, I'll have a teaching assistant for the Chunin exams. Oh please, came the sarcastic reply from Ebisu, he has no chance against a real Chunin even if you gave him a year. Okay, then let's sweeten up the pot then? Responded Kakashi, already enjoying having new students to talk about and bet on. Say 10,000 yen? You're on, Kakashi, came Ebisu's immediate reply, as anime tears began running down his cheeks as he thought about how to spend all that money he was sure to win off Kakashi, and he seemingly checked out into his own little dream world, that had most of the onlookers wondering if something was seriously wrong with the usually very rule-oriented ninja who was mumbling about easy money all the while. Good, replied Kakashi with a meaningful look at the Hokage, before searching out and finding his eternal rival, who he also gave a small look to, indicating that he had something he wanted to talk to Konoha's green beast about once the meeting broke up. back with Naruto. Arriving at his favorite ramen stand, and greeting two of his most precious people Ayame and Tsuchi Ichiraku, he quickly orders himself some of his new special miso ramen and recounts his day of becoming a ninja to his captivated audience. After a dozen bowls of the food of the gods, he had finally exhausted his tale of bravery and awesomeness that saw him by the end a genin of the leaf. Promising the father-daughter pair that he would now be able to come by more often once he started earning money from missions, he said his goodbyes before heading back to his apartment to get a few more things he needed before he continued to train. Having replaced all his kunai and shuriken that were lost or destroyed during his recent bell test, he also grabbed the Fuinjutsu starter set he purchased the other day before making his customary clones to start spamming his training. With each of the now 1,000 clones having a chakra version of the starter set brushes, ink, and paper, he had them spread out throughout the training ground before getting to the practice of increasing his penmanship until he was capable of creating his own seals. While the clones slowly worked through the many calligraphy-type exercises related to Fuinjutsu, the real Naruto upped his training weights back to the third setting and set about running himself into the ground again. Throughout the next several hours as the afternoon bled into the evening and then the night, Naruto continued with his clone training and his own physical training, only stopping to grab snacks, or to dispel and then spawn more clones. By the time he was ready to drag himself back to his apartment for some well-deserved rest, he had worked for over 7 hours straight on his Fuinjutsu with over 1,000 clones and had some serious memory transfer to deal with. As he finally laid down, he started dispelling them in groups of 10 as at least their memories were all very similar, and by the time he was finished was completely drained mentally now as well as physically, and couldn't keep the smile off his face as he fell asleep stronger than he was the day before. Chapter 5: D-Ranks and Growth. The next several weeks saw a remarkable improvement in Team 7's most unpredictable member, as he showed up every day ready to work his ass off and did just that. Luckily, Naruto had taken Kakashi's reluctance to ever talk seriously about why he was always late to everything, as permission to do his own thing most of the day. He would usually show up at training ground 7 around 10:30 or so, since Kakashi had yet to arrive before 11 a.m. yet, and was always moving and doing something physical to increase his training. They would practice until lunchtime, usually separate to get a small bite to eat, and then head to the mission desk to pick a D-rank chore for that afternoon, then rinse and repeat. The other really great thing Kakashi did that first week as his sensei was introduce him to his fellow Jounin and self-proclaimed eternal rival the Ninja Might Guy in order to find and develop a taijutsu style that worked for him. Guy was beyond eccentric with a ridiculous green spandex monstrosity he wore as a ninja outfit, a somewhat childish-looking bowl cut, and a pair of the bushiest eyebrows anybody has ever seen. He also came complete with a mini-clone in the person of Rock Lee, a fellow genin to Naruto who specialized in taijutsu as well, and as a mini-clone of his own sensei, looked equally ridiculous and who was quick to label Naruto his own eternal rival. Regardless of their eccentricities though, the pair really knew their stuff, and within days had Naruto competing against Lee almost constantly, despite being on very different weight training levels. Likewise, he was constantly being pushed in one of his weakest areas, so that over the course of that first week, he had improved to a level that had even Sasuke look at Naruto in a new light at times when they were working on team training. He had also exhausted the starter weight training set, but was fortunate that Guy knew of a better set of training weights he used for himself and Lee, and now Naruto who was quickly trying to catch up. Because of his massive clone training so many things for long periods of time that others just couldn't match, it gave the real Naruto so much time to work on his growing taijutsu as much as possible at the beginning without neglecting other areas of growth. He was truly getting better at an astounding rate, and by the end of the third week, could probably battle Sasuke to a draw more times than not, and still increasing with every day and every clone. His penmanship had quickly advanced to and then passed the required level for Fuinjutsu, which he was just now starting to experiment on and make his own beginning seals. One of the biggest other areas of growth, though, was in his chakra control, which he had continually spawned clones every day just to continue to work on. It was a never-ending cycle, though, as every time he trained and used his chakra, it grew back a little stronger and denser and therefore in need of more fine-tuned control, and then simply rinse and repeat. He had progressed to the water-walking exercise, and had it mastered within days, and continued use and training in it had allowed him to reach a milestone he never expected to reach. He created perfect basic illusion bunshins, useless though they were, and brought a proud smile to his whiskered face. On the mission side, he was still bored senseless over all the chores disguised as D-rank missions they had to do, especially since Kakashi wouldn't let him spawn clones to do all the work when his whole team was there working on their teamwork. His sensei did, however, allow him to take his own D-rank missions with his clones anytime he wanted, as they provided a good service to the village, bringing in money to Konoha and himself, which was a real help. His Fuinjutsu supplies were starting to really add up, and he was finding himself in need of more money almost constantly to get the things he wanted to experiment with and continue training on. His schedule had kept him so busy that he didn't even realize that it had been weeks since graduation and the last time he was actually able to talk to either Iruka or the third Hokage, and decided he needed to remedy that soon and pick the two men's brains. Iruka had promised to teach him the body flicker jutsu, and he also wanted to ask the Hokage about any few ninjutsu teachers he could direct him to, as the art of seals was very difficult to trudge through on your own. With that thought in mind, he returned to the mission desk his team left an hour ago, having finished painting Maiko-san's fence, to find the two people he was thinking about still there handing out missions. Hokage-sama, bowed Naruto respectfully, getting several raised eyebrows from those nearby not used to seeing the formal side of the blonde, Iruka-sensei. Hi Naruto, greeted Hiruzen Sarutobi happily, as he looked over one of his favorite people, and couldn't help but be impressed at how much the young blonde had grown in such a short amount of time. What can I help you with today? Well, came Naruto's somewhat embarrassed reply as he ducked his head a bit before glancing over to his former Chunin teacher. I was hoping Iruka-sensei would help me with my training tonight. He promised to show me a new jutsu and maybe spar. I did? Questioned Iruka, as he thought back to the last time he met with Naruto, right before his bell test with Kakashi, before it suddenly came to him just as Naruto replied exasperatedly. Yes, came Naruto's reply. I'm ready to learn the body flicker jutsu. The Shunshin? Really? Asked a now curious Hokage as he looked between the pair, wondering how far Naruto had come in such a short time as a genin. Databeo Hokage GG, came Naruto's exuberant exclamation, and had the old Hokage smile warmly at the personal moniker only Naruto would ever use to speak with him, and which always made him happy. One step closer to taking that hat from you, GG. Is that so? Asked an amused Hokage, who could always count on Naruto to lift his spirits, and who also saw some truth to the young genin's claim after having watched him train to levels that would kill most men and barely slowed him down at all. Databeo, responded a determined Naruto as he locked eyes with the old leader of the village, trying to show him how serious he was about that goal and not wavering a bit. Fair enough, replied Hiruzen seriously, knowing that while usually a prankster of the highest order, this was one thing Naruto didn't joke about anymore, now knowing what it took to be a ninja of Konoha, and eventually to become the Hokage. Iruka, thanks for your help today, but it looks like you have a prior engagement I wouldn't dream of keeping you from. Thanks, GG, came the honest and heartfelt reply of Naruto, who then turned to the scarred Chunin with a large grin on his face. Ready, Iruka-sensei? Ugh, I guess, came the lazy drawl of the older academy instructor, as he got up and made his way out of the mission office trailing behind a bouncing and excited Naruto, who was already talking about everything else he had been working on since the two last met up. Iruka knew Naruto was not a fan of theory, so only touched on the basics of the Shunshin, how you had to flood your body with chakra and then aim it at your desired target. It was really just chakra-enhanced speed in a very fast and short application that had been refined into a technique over the years, instead of simply building up one's speed naturally. After several side-along trips and self-attempts at it, Naruto was able to perform his first Shunshin directly into a tree. Ow! Exclaimed a bruised Naruto, in both body and ego, as he fell to his backside after crashing face first into the large and unmoving tree. Haha, laughed Iruka a little. That's usually what happens to first-timers, Naruto. The same thing happened to me too. Really? Asked a curious Naruto, who despite getting to know the older Chunin better in the last year of academy classes and even more since the Mizuki incident, didn't really know much about one of his few friends and wondered what that said about him as a friend to others. Could you tell me about your first genin team? He continued curiously, figuring he may as well start learning about his precious people sooner, so he could better get to know them, and knowing he owed them his attention as most of their past interactions were always about him and his problems. Sure, Naruto, but let's save that discussion for Ichiraku's afterwards, answered the older Chunin, ignoring the happily cheering Naruto as he learned about their next stop and couldn't wait already. Over dinner that night, Iruka explained all about his first genin team under the Jounin Kaina Uchiha and his first teammates, both of whom were no longer with us. Rookie of the Year, Kida Uchiha, his sensei's own son, and Reina Hyuga, a branch member of the Hyuga clan, and also the Kunoichi of the Year. He went on to explain that he too was a prankster and the dead last and got paired with the top two ninjas in class, and was constantly being ignored and overlooked in favor of his two more well-known and more promising students. The thing that saved him was the small friendship he created with Sarutobi Hiruzen after the death of his parents in the Kyuubi attack, and the little help and hints the older Hokage would slip into his things over time. He also taught him about the Will of Fire, and how important that was to Konoha, and was one of the main reasons Iruka was an academy instructor now. Anyways, shortly after they started doing more regular C-rank missions, they encountered one that just went wrong. They were given bad mission information, and were ambushed by a team of IWA Nins out near the border of Kusugakure, and would have all died if not for their sensei. The IWA Jounin successfully engaged Kaina from the very beginning of the ambush, as the team of IWA Chunin quickly ganged up on the less experienced Konoha Genin team, focusing first on eliminating the Uchiha they felt was the biggest threat. Within moments of the fighting starting, his teammate and rival was dead and the only female member of the group tied up, knocked out, and being carried like a sack of potatoes by the largest of the IWA Nins. The two remaining IWA Chunin continued to taunt and play with Iruka, sensing absolutely no threat, and also with him not part of a clan, was completely expendable, and they were simply playing with their food while slowly wearing him down. But then, Kainao saw his son's severed head and simply lost it, exploding with chakra before his eyes changed into something Iruka would never forget. The Tomo of the Sharingan evolved into a pinwheel pattern, then everything changed. A large chakra construct grew out of his sensei, the size of a boss summons, that tore through everything in its path including the IWA Nins and their Hyuga hostage. Kainao was never the same after they came back to Konoha with the dead bodies of both of Iruka's more powerful teammates, and it definitely changed things for him as well. Kainao committed seppuku shortly after returning to the village, not able to handle the loss of his only son and the destruction of his first and only Genin team. After that, Iruka became a reserve Genin and had to wait a while until a team lost a member to promotion until he was brought on so they could enter the Chunin exams, but broke up afterwards when all three passed and became Chunin of the Leaf, each going into different fields from there. Naruto was a little shocked that his teacher had so much trauma to deal with from such a young age, and also how similar their team assignments were, and even how they were seen within their teams as the dead last. He was also fascinated by the tales of the Sharingan Dojutsu of the Uchiha clan, having heard Sasuke mention it enough times to know it was a very big deal, and wanted to know more about it from what Iruka experienced, and its history in Konoha. Iruka told him most of that information he sought would not be available to the main population, and the only true history of the Uchiha would be in their clan library, with the Chunin section of the Shinobi library with just a basic primer that told of the known stories related to the founding of Konoha with Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. By this point it was starting to get relatively late, and Naruto asked Iruka if he had time for the spar he promised him weeks ago, wanting to test himself against a superior opponent, and still much too energized to sleep this early in the evening. The pair ended up heading to the academy training grounds, as they were the nearest and most familiar to them both to get in some training. Once there, they set up quick ground rules as this was a friendly spar, and both went through a quick stretch to loosen up before they were both ready to go. "Are you ready, Iruka-sensei?" asked an excited Naruto, who Iruka was surprised to see enter an unfamiliar taijutsu stance and look pretty comfortable as he bounced on the balls of his feet as he waited to begin. "Hajime," answered Iruka, as he exploded into motion, charging at the younger blonde, hoping to throw him off and end the fight relatively quickly, but was surprised when Naruto's grin just grew as he neared him, ready to deliver a basic academy knife strike. "Ha, you'll have to do better than that, sensei," laughed Naruto as he redirected the knife strike lazily, and landed a quick two-punch combo just under the extended arm of his former teacher that had him cringe and realize that this wasn't the same Naruto dobe he was used to dealing with, and made him reevaluate the young blonde even closer. For the next 20 minutes, the two friends traded blows back and forth, both taking turns seemingly leading the fight as they attacked while the other defended until a counter switched up their roles. Iruka couldn't believe it, as he was pushed to his admittedly rusty limits by a genin who had only graduated less than a month ago, and was showing real skill in the area of taijutsu. At the next small pause, the academy instructor created some actual space before he started making hand seals and was soon throwing around a few low-level earth jutsus to hopefully break the taijutsu stalemate and take control of this spar. That, however, was met with his young blonde opponent also deciding to switch to ninjutsu, and made his favorite cross-hand seal before spawning only a dozen clones, and then instantly switching out with the one furthest away from the incoming earth attacks. Iruka quickly realized that fighting Naruto with ninjutsu would be a huge disadvantage to him, as the shadow clones of Naruto were too numerous, or could be if the blonde wanted, and skilled to simply overpower them all without going all out, and maybe even then. So, he quickly abandoned his next ninjutsu attack, and switched it up to genjutsu, something he expected Naruto had not yet overcome, and may be his only chance to win this spar and save face from being defeated by his probably worst ever academy student. "Demonic illusion, hell viewing technique," spoke Iruka, after a quick set of hand seals that had his young opponent in front of him come to an instant and complete stop along with all of his nearby clones. Only a single pair of clones managed to avoid the genjutsu initially, but with the remaining clones almost immediately freaking out from the genjutsu they were now under, it wasn't long before clones started dispelling. With them dispelling, their memory of the genjutsu was then transmitted to all the others, so very quickly Naruto felt as if he was hit with 24 horrifying ways to die, all created by his own subconscious viewing of the genjutsu, which only seemed to add merit to the illusion. It definitely made for two confused clones, who after watching the many imaginative ways they could die, both simply dispelled themselves by tackling the original Naruto to the ground in an effort to also see if they could shake the blonde awake in the process. Luckily, the dual tackle/dispelling did in fact shock Naruto out of the genjutsu he had still been stuck under, but unfortunately it did nothing as Iruka had the match well won by this point, as a grumbling Naruto complained about stupid genjutsu. Iruka ran him through the normal ways people dispel genjutsu, and Naruto had no problem upsetting his internal chakra system to dispel the illusion, but still struggled with having the illusion placed. If he was aware of the genjutsu, he could disrupt his chakra easily enough to dispel the illusion, but he most struggled with simply knowing when he was under a genjutsu. Much later that night, while brainstorming ideas, he came up with a possible idea he would try to implement the next day in order to better combat the problem he had with genjutsu in general. He would create a shadow clone genjutsu dispelling team, 3 very hardy clones continually cycling through the process of dispelling and respawning clones away from any action. This would have the added benefit of keeping all of his clones in the original with the newest set of memories, and with the continual internal chakra disruption, that would make dispelling genjutsu a continuous thing that he wouldn't even need to worry about anymore. For now, though, he thanked Iruka for all his help and for the spar to give him an idea of how far he had come and still has to go, and headed back towards his apartment before his training continued. Despite the time getting to when he usually turns in for the night, Naruto this evening has a bit more energy still to burn when he returns to his apartment, and decides he can always send out more clones. With the thought to research other clones and ways to make them stronger or more durable, Naruto spawns close to the now customary 1000 clones and tells them to get to work finding the solution. Over the next few days, Naruto's clone research and later experimentation really started to pay off, as he discovered the many different elemental clones available even if they were currently beyond him, and found ways to increase both the chakra capacity and the density of his favorite shadow clones. He also seemingly stumbled upon a shadow clone explosion technique that allowed him to use his shadow clones as kamikaze bombers, which really increased his offensive output and made his opponents standing still and taking on his clones a suicidal prospect. The real gem of the research, though, was a blood clone which was very durable and could act as an independent clone spawning station if Naruto took the time required to set them up. The process was relatively difficult, but not impossible by any means, and required a beginner's knowledge of Fuinjutsu, which Naruto had slowly been acquiring over the last 3 weeks since becoming a genin and almost a Kage's worth of chakra. He started with his ultra-dense shadow clone, pouring copious amounts of chakra into the clone before moving on to the next step. Using his own blood, he wrote Fuinjutsu seals all over the clone's body in the pattern discovered from the old scroll he found behind the rack of old scrolls in the Chunin section of the Shinobi Library, and watched after activating it, as the seals lit up as the blood was absorbed into the glowing body of his clone until he looked exactly like the original. The whole process took over an hour, and left Naruto on the verge of exhaustion, but after a large meal and a little rest, he was ready to try again for blood clone number 2, knowing how valuable they would become for him. That night, the original Naruto went to bed immediately after creating blood clone number 2 from his exhaustion, but left his 2 new blood clones with instructions to continue spawning more clones until they were out of chakra, then wait a while and do it again. Naruto was awoken several hours later to more noise than he was accustomed to in the morning, as he could see over 24 Naruto clones all throughout his apartment fixing things, cleaning, studying, preparing breakfast, you name it, and there was probably a Naruto clone currently working on it somewhere in the cramped space of his apartment. Taking a moment to process several hundred new memories from the night, which all came from newly spawned clones while he slept, he realized that he was running out of room and really needed to expand his operations to keep up with his clones' demands. With that thought, he sent out word to start developing clones for civilian jobs to start bringing in more money, sent teams of clones to clean out the training grounds of scrap metal and weapons for resale, teams for hunting and foraging in the forests around Konoha, and even sent out a search party to scout and look for a large enough space to occupy. He marveled a bit at how much he had grown in just a short month of real clone training, how much further he still had to go as a ninja, and how his clones were going to lead the way to his continued growth and development. He then went to his early morning workout/training with the Green Beast for several exhausting hours until the sun was actually up, and he could take a break for a late breakfast until he had to meet his own team. Realizing that he better head towards Training Ground 7 for his team meeting before he too was considered late, he left his blood clones in charge of his apartment and the expansion project. He contemplated other ways of increasing his funds, and promised to remind Kakashi about his deal to let him perform D-ranks with his clones separately from the team as long as he was still working with said team as well. He also wondered if his growing Fuinjutsu skills had reached a level where he could start making money selling his sealing scrolls and explosive tags, which would be a huge boost to his financial resources. "Hey guys," came Naruto's greeting after arriving at Training Ground 7 to find both Sasuke and Sakura already waiting in their now customary spots by the little bridge. "HN," grunted Sasuke in his standard nonverbal reply, before going back to brooding as he leaned against the bridge. "Hi Naruto," came Sakura's pleasant response, having considerably warmed up to Naruto now that she knows how strong he is as a ninja, and since he stopped pestering her for dates almost completely, and was even trying to help her train, she found him a rather easygoing teammate. "What's our plan today?" "I was going to keep working on chakra control while I wait," answered Naruto easily to the pink-haired girl who he had been trying to help some for the past week. "Want to join in again?" "Sure," came her immediate reply. "Can you show me the tree climbing exercise one more time? I think I've almost got it." "No problem," said Naruto as he led the way towards the tree line, and before even arriving made the familiar seal and brought forth over 1,000 shadow clones that he then sent out to practice before turning to his female teammate and walking her through the steps of the basic chakra control exercise. Sakura had no problems picking up the tree climbing exercise very easily due to her immaculate chakra control, and Naruto then simply had her continue to go up and down the tree as much as she could to continue pushing herself and increasing her chakra reserves. The real Naruto switched out with a clone early into the practice so he too could continue training his body physically as he killed time until Kakashi decided to show up and get the day's team training started. Sakura was pretty exhausted once Kakashi did finally arrive a little after a half an hour, but was still able to go through the team building exercises and formations practice relatively easily before being dismissed for lunch. That afternoon's D-rank mission was the 4th Tora retrieval mission completed by Team 7 in the last 2 weeks, and again left every member with claw and scratch marks and a strong desire to see that cat suffer. Naruto was able to corner his sensei for a brief bit to confirm he had permission to run unfinished D-rank missions with his clones, and quickly picked up all remaining D-rank missions not assigned and sent a batch of clones off to complete them all before the end of the day. He also learned from his sensei that there was a small exhibition match in 2 days that Kakashi arranged for Naruto to show off his skills against a real opponent who would really test his improved growth, and didn't mention anything about the side bet he had on it. Naruto didn't think much of it either, other than showing excitement at getting to fight against another strong opponent to test himself and see how far he was coming along. He didn't really care about who it was, probably another genin team to practice, and dismissed it as unimportant compared to his continued training. That night, after creating another blood clone, and when he was finally getting ready for bed, the work of his clones brought a large grin to his whiskered face, as he reviewed all the money they made him from missions, the promise of money from his many new civilian jobs, and from all the metal they found and sold. That night, with 3 blood clones continually spawning clones, Naruto again woke up with many hundreds of sets of memories to go through over the night, and couldn't believe how quickly things were starting to happen. His horde of clones had already secured enough funds to make a legitimate offer on the current apartment complex he lived at, which would provide a great starting point to his expanding empire. They also discovered some underground tunnel systems that had a point of entry very nearby his apartment, that he made plans to explore and expand into as a way of moving around the village undetected. Doing a massive clone spawning of his own, he added almost 1,200 clones to those created by the blood clones through the night, and had them push forward with his plans as he headed off to start his training with the green beasts of taijutsu for a few hours until he was supposed to meet his own teammates for their team training. "Hi guys," greeted Naruto as he arrived at Training Ground 7 to again find his teammates in their customary spots. "HN," came the Uchiha's usual grunt. "Hey Naruto," responded Sakura, who got up without even being asked this time, and headed towards the tree line to continue where they left off yesterday in her training. When Kakashi arrived and witnessed Sakura working on building her chakra reserves by working on her tree climbing with Naruto, he was pleasantly surprised that they had already learned that skill, and wondered if they had started on water walking, and why Sasuke wasn't joining them. He soon learned that Naruto offered to show them both the tree climbing exercise a few days ago, but only Sakura took up the offer since Sasuke didn't think Naruto knew anything worth learning. Liking the initiative it showed, Kakashi rewarded Naruto with one new jutsu he would teach him after learning he already was capable of water walking, and felt he deserved something extra. Kakashi then had Sakura and Naruto move towards the small pond in the training ground to practice water walking, while he went and got Sasuke set up on the tree climbing exercise. After a half an hour, Kakashi was watching Sakura struggle to maintain her footing on the water for more than a few seconds at a time and encouraged her to keep at it, as her chakra reserves were growing exponentially. After watching Naruto run through a taijutsu spar against 24 clones on the surface of the water without a single misstep, Kakashi smiled at the younger blonde who looked so much like his own sensei, Minato Namikaze. He really was impressed with how quickly Naruto was progressing, showing an initiative and drive that reminded him of his parents and his own upbringing, and hoped the young blonde didn't burn himself out working so hard. Thinking about what else to show the hyperactive young Jinkyuichi, he decided it was probably time to give him the start to elemental chakra, as his clones just gave him such an edge on learning that he could literally take years of training and condense it into one day with the amount of clones he could get working on something. Unless Naruto had something specific he was looking for, He made up his mind to get his hands on some chakra paper for tomorrow, but first was going to run a little experiment with his favorite little blonde genin. "Hey Naruto," called Kakashi once he saw the young man about to start another taijutsu clone battle on top of the water. "Come with me over here, I promise you a technique." "Is it a super cool one?" asked the Naruto that appeared before his sensei in a flash, that almost had Kakashi wonder if he inherited more than just his dad's looks, and had his customary eye smile twinkle happily as he gazed at the excited young Uzumaki. "I'll make you a deal," started Kakashi, getting Naruto's attention instantly with his serious and somewhat uncharacteristic tone. "You follow my instructions and let me run a little clone test with you right now, which will eventually lead to several new avenues of research for you and your clone army, and maybe be the catalyst to make you great one day, or I give you a generic B-rank bomb jutsu in thanks for helping Sakura start training." I think with how you phrased that choice, I am going to pick the first option and let you run your clone test," replied Naruto after a few moments of careful thought, and realizing that with his newly discovered shadow clone kamikaze bombs, that generic B-rank bomb jutsu wouldn't be too helpful anyway, and was also very curious about what his sensei thought could be that significant to his growth. "Good choice, Naruto. See, I knew you weren't a dope," came the eye-smiling reply from Kakashi, even as he insulted his student and tried to get a rise out of him to see what he would do. "I'm not a dope," came the grumbled retort from Naruto, who simply glared at his sensei in challenge as he waited for what the silver-haired Jonin had in mind for this experiment, but didn't react any other way. "Good," answered Kakashi with a small nod of approval. "Now tomorrow I am going to bring some chakra paper to help determine your elemental chakra affinity, but before that I was hoping to run a clone experiment to see if we can't determine your elemental affinity through hard work." "I'm not sure I understand, sensei?" came the questioning voice of the younger ninja as he tried to recall everything he knew about elemental chakra, which wasn't much. Each of the 5 main elements has an elemental exercise for beginners to start getting a feel for the elemental chakra within them. They usually start with their primary affinity. Mine is lightning. We can determine yours with the chakra paper I will bring tomorrow, but we may also be able to determine your affinity through trial and error, continued the silver-haired Jonin to the now wide-eyed younger ninja who was starting to understand what his sensei was aiming at. "Because of your clones and massive chakra reserves, you can practice these 5 beginner exercises simultaneously and separately, and we can use your progress and growth in any of the elements to get an idea for what may be your affinity, as it will always be easier to work with an element you are in tune with or have an affinity for, and likewise harder to work with its opposing element. So if I had a fire affinity, I would get those exercises quickest and the water ones slowest?" asked Naruto, trying to ensure he understood completely and starting to realize how helpful this could be if he learned about all 5 elemental affinities. "You got it," replied Kakashi with his customary eye smile. "Now let's start with 50 clones, 10 for each element, and we'll go through the exercises." For the next half an hour, Kakashi shows Naruto and his clones all 5 of the beginning elemental leaf exercises several times. Trying to burn the leaf for fire, cut the leaf for wind, crumble the leaf for earth, electrocute the leaf for lightning, and soak the leaf for water. Kakashi demonstrated each one, though he struggled with water, as he was a primary lightning with a fire secondary. Naruto was able to see the results and learn the little tricks that each element seemed to have. Air needed to be grinded down almost like the sharp side of a blade, water needed to be saturated from surrounding water molecules, lightning needed that static charge, fire needed to be rubbed together and fed oxygen, earth needed to be broken down into dirt. When Kakashi left him to his own training to check on the other 2, Naruto couldn't stop the grin that was forming on his face as he realized how helpful these exercises were towards the next big building block of any ninja's arsenal, elemental attacks. Deciding to speed this step along a bit, he created another 500 clones and split them into 5 even teams to keep everything fair, and had them join their fellows in practicing until they dropped. Naruto himself took a turn trying each of the beginning leaf exercises to see how little progress had been made with each of the elements, and realized that this might take some serious time and work. After today's mission, tilling a farmer's field on the east side of the village, the 3 genin separated for their own homes and lives, or more training for the 2 boys of the team. While Sasuke predictably returned to his compound's own private training grounds, Naruto didn't immediately head to dinner or another training ground but looked around to make sure he was alone before disappearing down into the nearest sewer manhole. Once down there, he used his own memories of countless clone explorers to navigate his way throughout the village's sewer system, until he came upon a different set of tunnels that also crisscrossed the entire village and led to many very interesting and strategic points throughout Konoha. Knowing that most of these tunnels were completely abandoned from the lack of any signs of use, Naruto was happily planning out where and how to grow his small but growing empire and utilize these to avoid the general population. Finding a large open cavernous underground room not too far from his apartment complex, he decides to start building it out into a hidden training ground for him to practice away from any prying eyes. Spawning almost 1,400 plus clones now, He set them all to work on cleaning out and organizing the tunnel system and building the new underground training center and the protections he wanted put in place because of where it was. Heading back towards Ichiraku's ramen stand, Naruto was happy to discover another entrance into his secret tunnel system only a couple hundred yards from his favorite place to eat, and knew that route was going to become very popular very quickly. That night, Naruto set about making a fourth blood clone, knowing that they were simply too valuable not to exploit as a resource for gathering more information, money, and skills, and realized that he probably needed to start increasing his organizational efficiency as well. With that in mind, he decided to give each blood clone a specific function within his growing organization, to make sure everything was getting covered and accomplished that he wanted. Blood clone number 1, BC1, was going to be the overseer and run his underground training facility, and be responsible for organizing training areas and keeping up on learning new skills and strengthening those he already knew. Inside this department would also be research and development for new jutsu, and pretty much everything related to training in the ninja life. BC2 was in charge of the civilian side of things, and was responsible for keeping up with the many civilian working clones they had throughout Konoha in order to increase the money coming in, and looking for ways to grow that even further, as he had ideas to maybe start a civilian business, and would also be responsible for all the accounting and business ventures his clones got involved in. BC3 and BC4 were the information gathering clones who doubled as the Genjutsu dispelling team, as their main function was to both keep every clone and the original up to date with information and continue to search out new sources of learning and information gathering. Eventually, this would be the center of his spy network once they had exhausted all the libraries and learning available inside Konoha. But for now, they were working on the library infiltration project, and had even sent out a scout team to start investigating his teammate's compound in the hopes he might one day get invited or have to sneak inside the Uchiha library. He was distracted as he readied himself for bed by the elemental training clones successfully completing the first of the 5 beginner leaf training exercises, with wind. He wondered if what Kakashi believed was true, then that meant his primary affinity was wind, and he could honestly say that he was happy to have something relatively unique, especially in Fire Country. Luckily, he already had the shadow clones, as wind was the only element without a defined elemental clone that he knew of anyway, and wondered if that was something he should look into. Deciding to bring it up with Kakashi tomorrow, he reviewed the 5 beginner exercises he had been working on, and could tell that he had progressed in most of the others as well and couldn't wait to see the fruits it bore. When Naruto woke up that next morning, still relatively early in order to meet with the green beasts of taijutsu practice, he could instantly tell that today was going to be a great one as he reviewed the thousands of memories he collected throughout the night. Apparently, both the water and earth beginner leaf exercises had also now been completed by his clones, and he had even started to make some progress on the other 2, though either was close to completion as the other 3 now were. Earth and water were both very balanced with both offensive and defensive capabilities, and he thought they would be a great complement to his primary wind affinity. Now, having done the exercise successfully for 3 of the elements, Naruto was easily able to tell the difference between his affinity for each of the 3 as both water and earth chakra seemingly fought him a little still, while wind practically leapt out of him eagerly. Emboldened by his success, Naruto gathered his chakra for a larger than normal clone creation, and was rewarded with almost 1,500 clones emerging throughout his apartment complex, that he quickly sent off to join with the BC1 training. He then left for his own training with the Green Beasts, which he felt was really going well lately, as he and Lee were starting to push each other now that he had seemingly caught up enough to provide the Bull Cut Boy an actual challenge. His own taijutsu style that was an incorporated mixture of Gai's Goken style with several elements of the Uchiha Interceptor style, and even several elements of Kushina Uzumaki's own familial style she brought to Konoha from Uzushio that seemed to work really well for the young blonde, though he didn't know about that part yet. "Hey Naruto," called Guy once said blonde arrived at Training Ground 9, where the green beasts usually practiced and trained, and only saw the older Jonin there waiting with a large scroll across his back. "Sorry for the late notice, but my team is taking a C-rank mission today out of the village and I wanted to give you some things to work on while I was gone." "Oh, no worries, Sensei," responded Naruto, understanding the need for mission priority. "What did you have for me to work on?" "This is the complete set of taijutsu scrolls I created of the Hariken style, also known as the Hurricane style of Uzushio-Gakure," began Guy seriously as he watched the young blonde genin for any reaction to the name, knowing he would be dropping some information on the young orphan that would potentially change his life, but felt the young man deserved it for all the hard work he had put in recently. "Uzushio-Gakure?" asked Naruto with a confused face as he tried to remember or place the village hidden by whirling tides, and not coming up with anything, other than assuming it was part of Kirigakure. "The village hidden by whirling tides or whirlpool," came the response from Guy. "A village once allied with Konoha, its spiral symbol is still part of our crest. They were known as masters of Fuinjutsu, and their people well respected for their skills, potent chakra, and longevity of life." "Okay, answered Naruto, still somewhat confused about the information he was being given and feeling like he was missing something very important about it. Why are you telling me all of this? Because the other important detail of Uzushiogakure, that is most relevant to you, Naruto, continued Guy seriously, was the ruling clan of the village was the Uzumaki clan. Naruto's whole body instantly froze the moment Guy mentioned the name Uzumaki, and he couldn't move as thousands of thoughts raced through his mind in seconds. He came from a clan, he had a family, a history, a connection. Were there more Uzumakis out there? Why hadn't he heard of Uzushiogakure before now? It was almost overwhelming to the young genin as his thoughts went all over the place trying to understand why he was only learning about this now, and who else knew about and kept this information from him. I created this scroll from my own observations watching this style, as I had the pleasure of an Uzumaki leading my genin team, continued Guy quietly and with concerned eyes as he watched the young orphan try to come to grips with everything he was learning, and seemed to be struggling with it all and knew his next words would be an even bigger shock to the young ninja. I owe your mother more than I can ever repay, Naruto. Know that if you ever need anything of me, you need only ask. And when I get back, if you can show me you are serious about learning the Haraken style, I'll tell you everything I know about Kushina Uzumaki, the red hot habanero, and the previous Jinkurichi of the Kyuubi. Naruto was beyond stunned at this point, as he was assaulted with thoughts and fears he had dreamed about, and wished for longer than any other dream or desire he could ever remember. He was finally going to learn something about his mom, his clan, and his birthright, and he couldn't believe it was finally happening after so long of being alone in Konoha, and knew now why he always felt so connected to the spiral symbol of his village that doubled as the symbol of his clan. He wondered if this meant that others knew about his mother too, and also why he was only now being told about her, and not even by the Hokage who he had asked several times about his parents. Realizing that he was starting to get mad at all the unanswered questions he had, and all the information that was apparently being withheld from him, he quickly tried to calm down and thank Guy who at least was willing to provide some of that information, even if he wished he had been told previously. His mom was a Jounin of Konoha and a Jinkurichi to the Kyuubi. She also came from the ruling clan of Uzushiogakure, and he couldn't wait to learn everything he could about her. Thank you, Guy-sensei, came Naruto's first words after several long moments of trying to get his composure, despite a few tears seemingly finding their way down his cheeks. As he bowed deeply to the green-clad shinobi he could honestly say had been one of the most helpful and honest he had ever worked under, and was proud to consider his teacher and friend. I won't forget your kindness, and would very much like to know more about her whenever you are available. You got it, Naruto, answered Guy with a beaming wide smile that instantly lifted Naruto's spirits and made him realize how much lighter he felt now knowing anything about one of his parents, and had him gladly return the megawatt grin to Guy. When I return from this mission, I'll set aside some training time for us to talk about her. You really do remind me a lot about her. Thanks, Guy-sensei, responded Naruto thoughtfully and earnestly. See you in a few days then, young Naruto, replied Guy easily. Keep up the practice and I think you are really going to take to that taijutsu style. Yes, sir, came the determined, yet still somewhat emotional voice of Naruto, who just found a connection to his mother that he was eagerly looking forward to learning and incorporating into his own style. With his normal morning routine disrupted by Guys and his team leaving the village for a few days, Naruto decided that there was no time like the present to get started on something that connected him to his mother and his clan, and it was vital he learned it immediately. So he spawned a dozen clones to read over the taijutsu scrolls several times before he started at the beginning, going through all of the various forms and exercises until they came to him easily before moving on to the next. Over the next few hours, Naruto methodically tore through the taijutsu scroll prepared by Guy, committing every movement to memory and increasing the amount of clones steadily until he had over 100 working exclusively on incorporating these new moves into his already hodgepodge form. By the time for him to get a late breakfast, so he could continue with his day as usual, he had already gone through the entire scroll once and couldn't wait to keep practicing the new style that seemed much more natural to Naruto than anything he had used earlier. Having a quick meal, he then rushed to Training Ground 7 to find his teammates waiting for him to start their chakra control practice while they waited for Kakashi to appear. Sasuke actually asked Naruto for a hint about tree climbing, and the blonde easily replied with everything he learned about how much chakra to use and how to fortify your body with chakra as you climbed higher in the trees as the pressure increased on your limbs. He then helped Sakura get a little bit more steady on the water walking exercise she was currently working on, glad to see her still trying to train and improve a little and knowing she had a long way to go until she was really helpful to the team. With them taken care of, Naruto spawned a bunch of his own clones before setting them up to continue working on elemental chakra control, knowing how important the building blocks of great elemental attacks were going to be long-term. He divided the clones evenly and put them back to work on the beginning stages of all 5 elemental training exercises, to increase his familiarity with his expected affinity for wind, and his seeming secondary affinities for water and earth, while still trying to complete the lightning and fire exercises before Kakashi arrived for daily training. Yo! Greeted the lazy silver-haired one-eyed Jounin as he arrived via Shunshin in a swirl of leaves, interrupting the three practicing genin for a moment until telling them to continue with their current activities as he would come around and offer help and direction for the next steps. Starting with Sasuke, who was now getting the hang of the tree climbing exercise, and only needed to perfect it before moving on to the next. He then went to Sakura, who was now able to stand on her own above the water, as long as she didn't move too much, and tried to help with hints to keep up the practice. By the time he reached Naruto, he was able to tell that the young ninja had succeeded several times over on his task of learning the basic elemental exercises and asked his student what he thought of each element now. Wind is definitely the easiest. I was able to figure that one out within an hour of starting, answered Naruto with a happy grin on his flushed face. Water came next, with earth not far behind it. Sometime this morning my clones figured them out. I feel pretty close to getting fire, but I don't know if I will ever get lightning, and even fire doesn't feel completely natural. Came a thoughtful hum from Kakashi. I wonder if your tenant isn't responsible for the unnatural fire element. It would definitely make sense that the fox had a fire affinity. It would also maybe explain the unnaturalness of it compared to the elements you were able to work. I never thought of that. Do you think it's possible? Asked Naruto curiously, not knowing what went into the elemental affinities, and figuring he should probably try to find out, as it may be family related and something he shared with his unknown father or the recently learned of Kushina Uzumaki, and therefore very important to him on a personal level. It's definitely possible, answered Kakashi honestly. Jinchurichi have always carried over a bit of their demon, or more accurately, their yukai, demonic chakra, bleeds through any host to sometimes very specific effects. I am pretty sure the one-tailed tanuki comes with a fundamental and almost inborn control over sand. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that the Kyuubi also manifested in specific ways in its hosts. Do you know how it manifested in Kushina Uzumaki? Asked Naruto slowly and very carefully, having not thought he would have the chance to bring up his recently learned about mother, but wanting to know both if she manifested any of the Kyuubi's traits and if Kakashi knew her or would talk about her to him. Where did you hear that name? Asked a suddenly still and almost panicking Kakashi, as memories he had long since buried came to the forefront of his thoughts and her visage superimposed itself over her equally loud and energetic son, causing him to almost choke up and look away from the boy that so resembled Kushina and Minato, his hero and sensei, that it was an almost painful physical reminder of everything he had lost. Your rival, Gai-sensei, told me a little about her this morning before leaving on a C-rank mission with his team, answered Naruto slowly and carefully, not wanting to upset his Jounin sensei, as he realized from the man's reaction that he did in fact know Kushina and probably even more than he expected. Did you know her as well? Yes, Naruto, I knew her, sighed Kakashi in defeat, as his whole body seemed to sag in depression, and Naruto realized that his sensei's memories of her might not be all that positive, and that for some reason made him nervous, not wanting to learn that his mom wasn't as amazing as he dreamed and believed. But now isn't the time to talk about the past, he continued reluctantly after a moment's pause. After our mission today, I'll tell you a few stories I have. Naruto was beyond excited to potentially learn even more about his recently discovered mother, but even he could plainly see the topic was not a happy one for his Jounin sensei, and wondered what about his mother that saddened and upset the usually lazy and unflappable Kakashi Hatake. Hopefully, some answers would come this afternoon, and at least he now knew something about his mother, and it filled him with a previously unfelt feeling of pride, and a need to prove himself as a good successor in both his clan family and in hosting the Kyuubi. He had always wondered who his parents were, and why he wasn't allowed to even know of them as he grew up alone and unloved, and craving the love and care usually only spared by parents. Now, armed with just the basics of knowledge of who his mother was, and already he felt infinitely better with a strong sense of connection to this person that shared his burden of the Kyuubi, and couldn't wait to learn everything he could about her. He made a mental note/command to his hundreds of clones running around to start searching for any information they could find on Kushina, the Uzumaki clan, Yuzushiogakure, and Jinchurichi in general. With his thoughts still running around in his head, he tried to put it all to the side so he could instead focus on his sensei who was standing right in front of him, handing over a small scrap of clean white paper. Here Naruto, started Kakashi once he noticed that his young student was back to listening and paying attention. This is the chakra paper I was telling you about. Just push some chakra into it, and we will wait and see what your elemental affinity is. It reacts differently to every element, so let's see if your training was correct about your affinities. Naruto eagerly grabbed the chakra paper and sent his chakra into it, causing an instant reaction that had him dropping the paper almost as fast as he grabbed it. The paper instantly split in half rather violently, with one side slowly crumbling to dust as the other was slowly saturated with water, confirming his estimates about his affinities exactly. With that out of the way, Kakashi tried to help with the last two elemental affinities, but quickly told Naruto to just continue working on the basic exercises, if he ever wanted to incorporate lightning and fire jutsus in his arsenal, and that the next step in all the elemental training would come soon. He then instructed Naruto about the exhibition match he was to have the following day in Training Ground 7, against a Chunin opponent he expected Naruto to beat if he came at him like he did that first day for the bell test. Naruto asked if he could prepare the area with traps like he did against his Jounin instructor, but was told that he wouldn't be allowed to prepare, as that would give him an unfair advantage that he wouldn't even need. The silver-haired Jounin also told him to lower his weights, if not completely remove them, so he could fight at a faster/Chunin level, and also to start getting used to moving at faster speeds. "If you show me you are ready, I'll take your training up a notch after this exhibition fight," added Kakashi to the excitedly happy Naruto, who couldn't wait until his training was taken up a notch by his Jounin instructor. "Just remember to try your best, and make Guy and I proud." "Yes, sensei," mumbled a slightly embarrassed Naruto, who was unaccustomed to people rooting for him, and not used to others' support or offering him help in the past, and wanted to prove his teacher's faith in him wasn't misplaced. "I'll be ready." "I know you will, Naruto," added Kakashi with his usual eye smile, as he nodded at his younger blonde student with a growing smirk on his hidden face at the thought of the dead last crushing a career Chunin in just over a month of real training, and what he was going to do with all the money he won off of Ebisu, dreaming already of the newest Itchy Itchy Paradise Gold Edition he was saving up for. "Now go get some lunch and meet back at the mission office in 1 hour for our afternoon chores." Chapter 6: Fights and Explanations. Naruto woke up the morning of his planned fight against the Chunin of Konohagakure with a spring in his step, and a lightness on his heart that wasn't there yesterday. Kakashi had kept true to his words, and after their afternoon mission, cleaning the Inuzuka kennels, took Naruto to a ninja bar where the young blonde got his first taste of sake and the promised stories of his mother. He learned a bit about her history, and about the village she came from, Yuzushiogakure, who also happened to provide the first Hokage's wife Mito Uzumaki, and the first Jinkurichi of the Kyuubi. He learned that Kushina Uzumaki was very loud and brash, much like him, with an equally uncontrollable verbal tic and more energy than any two people combined. She loved ramen and pulling pranks, was a serious sword mistress, and not someone people ever wanted to mess with, earning herself two very distinguishable and accurate nicknames, the Red Hot Habanero and the Red Death. She was an above-average Fuinjutsu user, as most Uzumakis are naturally, and had a very unique bloodline that allowed her to use adamantium sealing chains she sprouted from her back that were strong enough to actually hold down the Kyuubi in a limited fashion. That last part about her bloodline was somewhat shocking, and it made Naruto wonder if he could ever activate the adamantium sealing chains, and resolved himself to getting even better at Fuinjutsu to give him the best possible chance to succeed. He was also pretty sure his clan did in fact have another bloodline, as they seemed to be the only family used to seal the Kyuubi, and he wondered if that had to do with the potent chakra and longevity of life that Guy mentioned ran in his clan. Just more things to look up and research to determine the truth, and now with the added knowledge of Kushina, he was even more motivated to get started. But first, he needed to prepare for a fight against a Chunin opponent he hadn't yet been introduced to, and for what purpose exactly he wasn't completely sure but trusted Kakashi enough. Getting up and spamming his usual mass of over 1,500 clones, he set them about their usual training tasks with the added instructions to prioritize learning about Kushina, the Uzumaki clan, and Yuzushiogakure. Since the Green Beasts were still currently out of the village on their C-rank mission, Naruto didn't have to meet up with anyone and started his usual morning workout knowing it was really helping him improve and get stronger. By the time he ate breakfast and made his way towards Training Ground 7, Naruto could already see several people present, including, to his absolute shock, the perpetually late Kakashi and the Hokage himself, Sarutobi Hiruzen. He also recognized Kurenai Yuhi and Sarutobi Asuma, the Jounin leaders of Teams 8 and 10 respectively, fortunately without their students since it was still pretty early. The other group of unknowns contained 5 people, an attractive and half-naked purple-haired woman in fishnets and a trench coat, another attractive dark brown-haired pharaoh-looking young woman with red Inuzuka clan markings on her cheeks that looked a bit like Kiba, a tall slender ninja in all dark blue almost black clothes and bandana with silly round sunglasses on his uptight-looking face. And finally a pair of goof-offs Naruto knew as the gate guards Izumo and Kotetsu. He knew both Chunin gate guards relatively well, having often been the subjects of one of Naruto's many pranks over the years, and were 2 of the more relaxed and laid back of his usual Chunin pursuers, often finding his pranks really funny. He could tell just from looking, though, that one of them was going to be his opponent today, as none of the other observers seemed to be getting ready for a fight, and was somewhat apprehensive about fighting a known Chunin. He knew Kotetsu was the lazier of the pair, but was also the stronger Genjutsu user, one of his untested weaknesses, and wondered if he was going to be testing his blood clone's respawning ability to truly keep Genjutsu from invading his ever-changing chakra system. "Ah, Naruto," spoke the Hokage loudly, once he saw the approaching genin and getting everyone to turn their attention to the young blonde, and causing most of them who hadn't seen him in weeks to do a double take thinking they were seeing the fourth Hokage in front of them. "Glad you made it on time," he continued with a pointed look at a suddenly sheepish-looking Kakashi, who just bowed his head and pretended to disappear. "Let me guess, he was going to be late," replied Naruto with a laugh as he nodded towards Kakashi. "And you made sure he was here on time?" "Can't have him miss his student's first triumph against a superior opponent," came the quick response from the village leader, especially when he was the one to offer the challenge. "Databeo Gigi," shouted Naruto with a fist pump, happy for the encouragement from the old man, and hoping to show everyone just what he was already capable of. "So which is it going to be?" he continued as he turned towards the two gate guards with a wide grin on his whiskered face and saw them both looking at him in a little shock and starting to feel excited about the upcoming fight. "Izumo? Kotetsu? Both? Both?" shouted Ebisu incredulously, before he began mock laughing in a very condescending way. "Please, this useless genin has no chance against either of them, let alone both." Naruto had in fact had similar doubts himself just this morning, wondering why he was fighting against a Chunin already, not thinking he was anywhere near ready. But after seeing the two gate guards he knew relatively well, he was less worried about being beaten and growing more excited for the chance to go up against a strong opponent and leave it all on the line. For some uptight prick to laugh and insult him like that, however, really upset him and had him narrowing his eyes and growling at the sunglasses-wearing idiot he was about to make eat his words, as he started gathering chakra at levels few of those present had witnessed firsthand. "Why shouldn't the two of them fight together?" started Naruto in a slow grinding voice as more and more chakra gathered around him, now visibly glowing to the stunned and wide-eyed spectators, as even more chakra was still building at unheard of levels for any genin. "I'll be fighting with my friends," continued Naruto as he brought his hands together in the cross seal in preparation for a mass shadow clone summon, and just held them there as he continued to pump even more chakra, now reaching beyond Kage levels and still growing. "Holy shit," came the fearful voice of the purple-haired observer, as she and the female Inuzuka both retreated several hundred yards further away from Izumo and Kotetsu, not wanting to be anywhere near whatever was about to go down, but also not even blinking, in fear that they would miss this epic moment. "Number one unpredictable ninja," indeed, came the softly spoken words of the Hokage, as he and Kakashi both retreated as well to a safer distance from the center of Naruto's mass shadow clone explosion to come, both grinning in excitement at their young friend's growing skill and power. Came the mumbled and shocked monosyllabic response to the largest amount of chakra Ebisu had ever witnessed being gathered, as he stood wide-eyed staring at the small blonde kid that better resembled the yellow flash at this moment than anything he had ever seen. Ebisu only had time to cringe in the next moment as an explosion of chakra that would probably be felt in the Fire Country capital saturated everything in a 2-mile radius and filled everyone's vision with the thickest smoke imaginable. Time seemed to freeze as the chakra saturated and settled over everything within the blast radius, and for several moments nobody moved or knew what exactly had happened, all except for one young blonde ninja who could only smirk at what he had managed to accomplish. It took almost 10 seconds for the wind to completely clear away the dense smoke that filled every inch of the training ground, and in its place left no square inch uncovered in the clones of one Naruto Uzumaki, all of whom had their eyes focused on the two shivering Chunin practically hugging one another in support. Without being able to actually count, Naruto guessed that he had almost doubled his largest ever spamming of clones, as he had to be close to having 3,000 clones filling up every square inch of training ground 7. With the two Chunin on the back foot, and still in shock from the massive amount of chakra used, Naruto was able to quickly attack them both with the nearest 24 clones, and quickly had them both overwhelmed and tied up with their chakra sealed in under 5 seconds. "That takes care of the Chunin. Want to see how I fare against a Jounin?" asked the closest Naruto to the still wide-eyed and open-mouthed Ebisu, as he watched in shock as the blonde demon easily dispatched the two Chunin like it wasn't even a challenge, and wondered how the hell Naruto grew so strong so quickly, having been the laughing-stock dead last barely over a month ago. Ebisu wasn't, however, given much time to understand what was happening next, as he was instantly being set upon by a horde of blondes for the next 5 minutes. Ebisu could barely breathe as he fought off wave after wave of Naruto clones, coming at him in small coordinated groups with attacking taijutsu and ninjutsu in support, and in very large continuous numbers. The older sunglasses-wearing ninja then tried similar tactics that Kakashi had used during the bell test, first using Shunshin, which didn't escape the notice of so many Naruto clones filling the entirety of the training ground they were using, and then trying to combat shadow clones with elemental and a single shadow clones of his own while the original Ebisu went underground to recover. He was therefore not at all prepared for the echolocation jutsu Naruto used to continually harass and hound him every time he stopped to take a breath and gave him no rest anywhere in the training ground. Ebisu was then forced to keep fighting as continuous waves of Naruto attackers kept coming, and knew he was quickly running out of energy and wouldn't be able to last much longer. He knew he needed to come up with something to combat the young stamina freak, or he would never live down the humiliation of this defeat, and therefore decided to try his favorite larger-scale jutsu. Hoping the fire dragon bullets he was most comfortable using would cut down the overwhelming numbers Naruto still had to his advantage, but wasn't sure if he would have the chakra to outlast every one of the demon's infernal clones. For the next 10 minutes, Ebisu was able to slowly start taking out small groups of clones with his fire technique, but Naruto was smart enough to keep his clones farther apart, and in smaller, more manageable groups so he never lost too many too quickly, all the while continuously hounding Ebisu and keeping him on the back foot. At the half-hour mark from the start, Naruto's clones had been reduced down to almost 1,000 remaining, but Ebisu was at that point on his last leg chakra and endurance-wise and was really struggling to keep the latest waves of Naruto clones from overwhelming him. In a last-ditch effort to protect himself, he created a 10-foot dome of solid earth, and tried to hunker down to outlast the continuous waves of clone fighters. The older Tokubetsu Jounin couldn't actually believe it, that the dead last demon container had grown so strong so quickly, but the proof was in front of him, and his spamming of shadow clones was obviously the reason for the accelerated growth, and just hoped his earth dome would hold out for a few minutes to catch his breath and come up with something else to turn this fight to his advantage. Naruto, however, was not going to waste any time or give the older ninja any chance to rest, and started sending explosive clones armed with homemade explosive notes, completely covering the dome before detonating. Destroying the earth chakra construct protecting his opponent in a concussive explosion that instantly knocked out Ebisu, caused all those watching to realize that Naruto just beat a Tokubetsu Jounin, who while not known as Super Elite himself, was no pushover. They also realized that had Naruto used the clone-grade explosion at the start with his 3,000-plus clones, he could have leveled half of Konoha, and that he definitely needed to be taken seriously as an up-and-coming ninja of great promise, just as the third Hokage predicted. Very well done, Naruto, praised Hiruzen with an affectionate smile directed towards the young blonde bundle of energy, whose clones were already cleaning up all the weapons and putting the training ground back to normal before they disappeared into the surrounding wooded area to continue with whatever they did all day. It's not every day a new genin can take on and defeat a pair of Chunin, or a Tokubetsu Jounin even if it was in a controlled friendly spar. Not every day? Came the sarcastic reply from the purple-haired woman, as she eyed the younger blonde like a piece of meat. With that chakra and those shadow clones he could probably take on a few Jounin and walk away. With those shadow clones, came the low and almost quiet reply from the stunned Inuzuka girl, who was still wide-eyed and staring at the impossible feat she just witnessed. He could do anything, learn everything, become unstoppable. Her gaze sort of blanked out at that point as she imagined all the things someone with that much chakra and that many shadow clones could accomplish. He was a literal one-man army, an unrivaled communication center, an infiltrators or scout stream, and with the time divided by thousands he could accomplish anything he dedicated his time or clones to. The fact that he was pretty damn hot too didn't hurt, she thought to herself before she realized what she was thinking and began blushing slightly as impure thoughts went through her mind about the young ninja her brother's age. I just wonder if that stamina translates to the bedroom? Came the somewhat lecherous question from her purple-haired friend next to her, and making her choke at the bluntness of Anko, and all those expendable clones talk about a fascinating fuckto. Anko, half-growled half-groaned Hana Inuzuka, well used to the other woman's overly sexual behavior and mouth, but at the moment not helping her remove the previous images she had of the young blonde ninja that only increased her blush and imagination, and had her purple-haired friend laughing at her embarrassment. Can someone untie us? Came a shout from the almost forgotten-about Kotetsu, as he remained hogtied on the ground next to his best friend with chakra seals closing them off to their chakra and any way to escape. And get rid of these fucking seals? Came Izumo's frustrated yell right afterwards. They're messing with my chakra and making my skin itch. Oh haha, that's actually the itching powder I put on those seals, chuckled Naruto with a sheepish grin directed at the two tied up and twitching Chunin, making several of the watching ninja double over in laughter. Sorry, let me get rid of those for you, continued Naruto as a pair of shadow clones appeared in front of each of the gate guards and quickly had the seals removed from their necks, and after a small application of chakra had them recharged and were pocketing them when Izumo asked him something. Wait, did you make those seals? Asked the older dark-haired Chunin with a slight gleam in his eye as he thought of how nice it would be to be able to seal off someone's chakra so completely they were practically useless. Sure did, replied Naruto quickly and with a pleased smile. Here, he added, having the clones hold out the recharged seals to their victims, you can have them as an apology for the itching powder and no hard feelings, right? Not at all, my man, responded Izumo giddily as he stared wide-eyed at the chakra seal in utter fascination. I can make more if you're willing to pay, added Naruto, seeing an easy returning customer in front of him, and just genuinely liking the pair, and explosive notes, and storage scrolls for now. Really? Asked Kotetsu, who while not as expressive over the chakra seals, was still very much excited for the chance to get good sealing stuff at probably much more reasonable prices than they overcharged at any of the stores in the village, and was pleased when the blonde-haired kid nodded.